Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, some decent sunshine and feeling pleasant, even as the breeze picks up later in the day. 16 or 17 Celsius in the southeast, 13 to 15 further north and west. And it is a cloudy, damp end to the afternoon across Wales and the southwest of England. The rain not that heavy at this point, but it is going to be increasingly windy through the Irish Sea, and that wind will affect Northern Ireland with some heavy rain at times. Western Scotland also seeing the heaviest rain during the afternoon and evening, whilst by this time the rain is approaching eastern Scotland and the far north. The rain moves through fairly quickly across western parts of the UK, but it will be heavy for a few hours into the evening and the first part of the night. Eventually it clears western Scotland and Northern Ireland with showers and clear spells following here, whilst it turns up across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England by dawn on Saturday. So with the cloud and the rain, it's going to be a mild start to Saturday with 13 or 14 Celsius by dawn. Fresher in the far northwest, some sunshine, albeit with a few showers following in, and a less windy day all in all. But the rain's slow moving across the Midlands and eastern England on Saturday itself. A damp day to come in many places. Brighter skies do follow into the west, albeit with a few showers. And that's all ahead of the next area of low pressure, which is likely to arrive on Saturday night and into Sunday as a deep low, bringing potentially disruptive winds.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The A74M in Dumfries and Galloway is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 15 and 16 from Moffat to Johnston Bridge, causing queues. Trains have been stopped between Lockerbie and Carstairs because of a signalling problem. In North Yorkshire, Gillygate in York is closed off the A19 at Bootham Bar traffic lights after an accident. There are long delays on approaches to there. On the M1 in South Yorkshire, there's a lane closed northbound for emergency repairs between junctions 37 and 38 from Barnsley to Huddersfield. In Pembrokeshire, the A478 closed each way at Rosshill after an accident causing queues. In Northamptonshire, Gennington Road in Corby is closed because of a fire causing delays. In Suffolk, the A143 is blocked by an accident at Hundon. In Kent, the A260 is closed along Hill Road in Folkestone where a car overturned. And on the M27 in Hampshire, the eastbound exit at junction 7 in Southampton's closed for repairs.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
National Trust Director General has said something rather curious. She's admitted that 70% of the charity's staff are Union Jack-hating progressive activists. Yes, this was speaking at a Labour Party fringe event. The boss of the charity, Hilary McGrady, acknowledged that there was a gap between her staff's views and the views held by the wider public. So was she being honest? Joining me now to discuss this is historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Mancu, who I believe is with me. Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Can this be true?
The founders of the National Trust and later figures involved in it, like my hero James Lees Milne, were really motivated by love of nation. But I think that love of nation in the Trust has become actively, national self-loathing. And that's really the state of modern Britain. And with the Trust, what we've done is we've actually entrusted our national heritage to those people who actually actively despise our national heritage. And it's utter madness.
Have these people wanted to take over charities like the National Trust for their political ends, or is it just something that happens? Is it just the type of people who work in charities?
This has been part of the long march through the institutions, that people need to understand that Britain is now a post-revolutionary society. So the buildings that house our institutions look the same, but the people who now run them bear no comparison to the generations who lovingly built and ran them. They are cuckoos in the nest, and we need to understand that. And of course, once you realize that, that explains completely why, the National Trust and others have crudely tried to denigrate our national heroes and link them and their houses to colonialism and slavery, as they ludicrously tried to do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Very good morning to you. It's 9:30 on Friday, October the 18th, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Nana Akweer.
Good morning. Now it's decision time. The Tory leadership hopefuls Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick clashed in a GB News event last night discussing the ECHR, Brexit, immigration and, of course, their thoughts on former UK leader Nigel Farage.
He speaks with conviction. When people hear him speak, they believe that he understands their concerns. Some people will say, oh, you need to tack to the left, you need to tack to the right. It is not about left or right, it is about right or wrong.
Look, I think Nigel Farage is rattled. He's talking about me a lot now. He doesn't want someone to lead this party with my track record.
King Charles and Queen Camilla will land in Australia this morning for their tour down under. Our man Cameron Walker is on the lookout for them.
When His Majesty lands, he'll be the first ever reigning king to step foot on Australian soil. Meanwhile, something very special is happening to the building behind me a little later, the Sydney Opera House.
Wow. That's coming up. Breaking news this morning. A baby has drowned in the English Channel after a small boat carrying migrants capsized.
And elsewhere, the Hamas leader is dead. The world leaders hope an end to fighting in the Middle East is getting ever closer as we see Yahya Sinwar's final moments here on this dramatic drone footage released by the IDF overnight.
And fat jabs stop boozers. The weight loss jab, like Ozempic, could soon be used to tackle binge drinking. Is there anything it can't do? But what are the health risks of these injections?
Come on then, Anna, roll your sleeves up. Let me give you some Ozempic.
Oh, no, terrible. Listen, I get it when if people are really obese, overweight and stuff like this, but obviously a lot of people would have said, oh, COVID, don't take the jabs, because... So I think we need to be careful of the the long-term effects of this jab, I think.
Yeah, I'm of the camp who says if you're 30, 40 stone and you're an imminent risk of dying because of your weight, I say great, get the weight off. But if you're 2, 3, maybe even 4 stone overweight, I would encourage maybe eating less, going to the gym, moving more, maybe some more sort of natural ways. But it's an interesting
Well,
debate.
a lot of people are taking it for a couple of months here and there to lose a lot of weight, and then there are issues. We will talk about all of that. But first, we'll get your latest news.
Very good morning to you. It is just after 9:30. A quick roundup of the top stories this morning before we hand back to Ben and Nana. And as we heard there, Israel's year-long war with Hamas took a dramatic turn yesterday as the IDF killed Yahya Sinwar, the group's leader and believed mastermind behind last year's October the 7th attacks. Unaware of his identity at first, IDF forces say they stumbled across Sinwar during a Gaza operation, taking out Israel's most wanted man. While Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a major blow to Hamas, he's warning the fight is still far from over. Talks between Netanyahu and President Biden in the US are currently focused on using this moment to free hostages and end the conflict, but Iran says the killing will only strengthen resistance. Meanwhile, Hezbollah in Lebanon has also vowed to escalate its conflict with Israel. Here, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves is expected to announce £3 billion in welfare cuts over the next 4 years. Those savings would, they say, come from reforming work capability rules and tightening eligibility for sickness benefits. Initially, a Tory proposal. Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall will oversee those changes aimed at moving around 400,000 long-term claimants towards employment. While Rachel Reeves plans to balance public finances with tax hikes and spending cuts, ministers have voiced some concerns over departmental budgets. The October budget will be revealed on the 30th of this month, with tax rises expected to feature prominently. Liam Payne's former One Direction bandmates say they're devastated, and they added they will miss him terribly in a statement released yesterday. The 31-year-old died after falling from a hotel balcony in Buenos Aires. A post-mortem found the singer suffered multiple traumas from the fall, with police reporting his room was in, they say, complete disarray. One Direction fans held a candlelight vigil in Argentina, remembering him for his kind, his funny and brave soul. And the body of the former First Minister of Scotland, Alex Salmond, is set to be flown home today. The businessman Sir Tom Hunter paid for a chartered flight to repatriate the Labour Party leader's body from North Macedonia, where he died of a heart attack on Saturday. The plane's expected to land in Aberdeen just after 1 o'clock this afternoon, with his family and party colleagues, including the current Albert Party leader, receiving the coffin. Salmond, who was 69, passed away while attending a conference in Macedonia. His family have asked for privacy at this time. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. A full roundup at 10 o'clock. Now, though, it's back to Ben and Nana.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello.
Good morning to you. Good morning to you.
Good
Sorry.
morning to you. Do you want to go first or shall I?
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you.
Ladies first.
Right, hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom. We are live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Ben Leo and me, Nana Acquia.
Morning. Thanks for your company this morning. It was all kicking off last night, wasn't it, in the Conservative leadership debate, only here on GB News. Robert Jenrick, of course, and Kemi Badenoch went head-to-head. They battled it out in front of a live studio audience of... they were Tory members, weren't they?
Yeah, Tory members.
Yeah,
Tory members.
and Patrick, of course, had that great sort of spin room show afterwards, speaking to the electorate here in Paddington.
Well, GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope, is the man who chaired the debate, and he has this report.
Kemi Badenoch, will you call, please?
Heads.
Heads. Tails it is, Kemi Badenoch. Do you want to go first or second, Robert?
I'll go first, Chris.
And with that, the race to lead kicked off on GB News. Robert Jenrick would face questions from the Conservative members first, followed by Kemi Badenoch. And it's straight for Robert Jenrick on how to bring back the Reform voters.
That we tackled the biggest issues facing this country. And I think that does begin with migration. Because if we don't regain the public's trust on that issue, if we don't get back the millions of voters that we've lost to Reform, we're just never going to be in government again.
It got spicy when talking about free speech.
The police have to enforce our existing laws without fear or favour. They must never allow a worry about community relations to stop fighting extremism.
Robert Jenrick's comments kept coming back to immigration and the ECHR.
So there's a clear choice here. It's leave or remain. And I'm for leave.
Christopher Chope has said today that Kemi Badenoch is preoccupied with her children. He says it's impossible to be a leader and a parent. Can a mum or a dad be that person and a leader?
Well, I hope so. I've got 3 kids myself. So I think he was wrong. He was definitely wrong.
The issue of slavery reparations is coming up. There's a meeting of the Commonwealth leaders next week. Should we pay slavery reparations for our imperial past?
No, absolutely not.
Then it was the turn of Kemi Badenoch. I asked if her pitch was based on principles but not policies, and if this was a problem.
I am not here to impose just what's in my head on everyone in the party. That is not what it needs. That is not how we unite the party. I know so many of you are tired and sick of the infighting and the squabbling. It happens when we don't get a consensus before we start proposing things to the public.
So where does she stand on ECHR withdrawal?
If we need to leave the ECHR in order to control migration, we should leave it. But it is not a silver bullet. It's not even the most radical thing that we can do.
Kemi Badenoch was asked by one of the members of the audience if it was time to end the culture wars.
It depends on who started these so-called culture wars.
They say you may have started it.
No, I don't think so. A lot of these things were happening long before Conservatives started speaking about them. I am worried about the way people talk about the history of this country.
But what does she think about being accused by a Tory MP that she can't be a mother of 3 and a leader?
Of course you can. I love my children. I have the most beautiful children in the world. I want to spend as much time with them as possible. I said to all of you that family was one of my key principles. I was able to be a great business secretary and trade secretary and equalities minister, effectively doing 3 jobs while balancing my home life. If I can do that, I can do this too.
And we did get some policies out of Kemi Badenoch in the end.
Labour's putting VAT on private school bills from January. Would you reverse it if you become Prime Minister?
OK, so...
It's a policy.
I know it is a policy, so I feel bad because I have to slightly change what I said. That is the very first thing that I will do if I become Prime Minister.
But crucially, what did the members think?
I think it was a tie, actually. But for me, I think Jenrick just about.
Yeah, I think Kemi, I think she's absolutely great.
At the end of the day, I have a feeling neither of them will become Prime Minister. What do you mean by that? Well, the thing is, neither of them are going to appeal to the electorate. We lost more votes to Labour than we did to Reform.
Christopher Hope, GB News, Westminster.
All right, so that was on GB News last night. You can watch it live. If you go onto YouTube, you can catch up with that or download the GB News app. But joining us in the studio is the political presentation coach, Graham Davies. Now, just to start with, Graham, who did you think came out on top of this?
If it was a boxing match, I think it would have been stopped after the 7th or 8th round.
Why?
In terms of political performance and getting that particular audience on their side, Kemi Badenoch had an outstanding show, because there does have to be a hint of show business in the era of social media when you're on a televised political confrontation.
So you think it's definitely Kemi Badenoch. All right, so let's talk about the body language of the two. Even though you think Kemi Badenoch had a great show and everything, how do you feel they actually performed? We've got a couple of things we want to show you. OK, this is Robert Jenrick, and this is when because he repeatedly says, end the drama, end the drama. So we're going to play that clip now and get your views on his body language.
Begins by ensuring that we end the drama. Let's get serious on migration. Let's end the drama. Let's end the excuses. Let's deliver again for the people of this country. So we've got to pick ourselves up and dust ourselves down. We've got to end the drama, end the excuses. That's why I say end the drama, end the squabbling. It's been a disgrace. It's let down all of you in this room.
So, Graham, do you think he would have rehearsed that line? That was the agreed buzzword or buzzwords prior to the debate.
He would have honed and rehearsed that line for a period of years, not necessarily months. I mean, for me, a political TV confrontation is about three things. It's about legacies, lines, and likeability. Legacy is about that thing, that key essential that you want the audience to remember above all else, and his indeed was end the drama, which he said no less than 11 times by my counting last night. Lines are the sort of phrases, the distinctive phrases that you use to support your core legacy. Now, Kemi's core legacy was it's not about right or left, it's about right or wrong. And probably, well, Jenrick had some fairly generic phrases to support his legacy, like, it's time to get serious, I'm for leave. Yes. There's always just that hint of, well, ChatGPT poured into a Savile Row suit with Robert Jenrick.
What do you think?
Whereas Kemi's phrasing, a lot more personal, a lot more distinctive. When she was asked about whether Nigel Farage should be made welcome back into the Conservative Party, she said, although we're a broad church, we won't invite a new guest into the church whose declared aim is to burn the church down.
Yeah, that was quite good. I did enjoy that line from Kemi.
Well, yeah, but how is she going to unite, as it were, the right without the support and the sense of Nigel Farage?
That's the problem. Kemi talks about being a broad church. You've got, I mean, I think the Tories, they need to decide whether they're going to be Lib Dems or centre-right party. I don't think you can go down this route of having both parties.
Well, you asked a bold question there. How is she going to unite it? Well, there are two approaches. See, the Jenrick approach is we will thrash out lots of policies now before the end of the leadership election. Kemi's approach, she would say a unifying approach, is to actually canvass opinions during a policy creation process over the next couple of years. And that's what she would say is a huge unifying factor.
All right, well, she talked about building a big team as well.
Yes.
So let's have a listen to Kemi Badenoch on her talk about building a team and whether you think her body language was convincing enough.
Because of how I worked, all of the ministers who worked with me in my department are supporting me. Don't believe all the things that other camps say. I am somebody who works well in a team, and I want to build a big team for the future.
Right, so what's your verdict on that?
Well, the way that she used her hands there in terms of body language, I want to build a big team, that to me came across as more natural than the slightly more choreographed multiple movements of Robert Jenrick. But the way that she came across, I believe, had the overall effect of this. That was a very well-behaved Tory member audience. They're always polite to everybody. And they liked Robert Jenrick. They were very polite. And after a couple of moments of hesitation, they would always applaud what he said. But Kemi Badenoch, she didn't just get like from the audience, she got genuine affection, and they were dying to applaud what she said.
Yes. Well, why, can we go back a couple of years to that, do you remember that power stance that Theresa May, Cameron, Osborne all used, the two legs apart in a very bizarre, I don't know what they were doing. What was that? And B, why have the Tories ditched it?
Well, the Osborne was certainly a coached effect, and he did use that to a remarkable degree. He looked slightly constipated while he was doing it. Sajid Javid was accused of imitating him, but in fact that was some naughtiness by some press photographers who asked him as he was standing outside the Home Office for the first time, can you just move to the right for about a foot? And suddenly they managed to get him in the same strutting position.
Because Jenrick this morning's been accused of looking awkward by just standing there with his hands down by his side and not really clasping his hands together or anything like that.
Well, if you saw his conference speech, you could say that he's actually learnt from his conference speech, because he was actually sort of almost like a sort of epileptic windmill during conference. Unfortunately, his hand movements were livelier than his words.
All right. Well, listen, Graham Davies, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. Thank you for your thoughts. Right, up next, King Charles and Queen Camilla will land in Australia today. It is his first visit as a monarch. We'll be crossing live to Sydney next to speak to Cameron Walker. You won't want to miss that. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Italian wine in Britain is worth a whopping £891 million and can be described as a Prosecco phenomenon, apparently. So joining us now to tell us more about why these Italian bubbles are so popular is Ed Smith, the founder of The Emissary, a British-based Prosecco brand. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, guys.
Thank you for coming in, and you've done just as we asked. You come laden with booze and bottles and glasses.
Exactly.
So the definition of Prosecco, Tatiana, you were saying earlier, is sparkling wine that's been made in certain areas of Italy. Which areas?
Exactly. So the Prosecco region is northeast Italy. It's about sort of an hour north of Venice, foothills of Dolomite Mountains. Very, very beautiful part of Italy. Veneto, exactly. Well done.
Show off.
I'm half Italian, so...
well, there we go. OK, you should be teaching me.
No, that's it.
So, yeah, so like Champagne, that has to come from the Champagne region in France. Prosecco has to come from the Prosecco region in Italy. And it's different to Champagne and other sparkling wines, like English sparkling wine, in that geography, like we just mentioned, has to come from that region in Italy. The grapes that are used are different. So Prosecco has to be at least 85% Glera, which is the native grapes of the region. And it's most importantly the method. So Champagne and English sparkling wines use the traditional method, where second fermentation, which produces the bubbles, happens in the bottle. Whereas Prosecco uses what's called the Charmat method. So the second fermentation happens in still vats. It's a much quicker process, and that's why Prosecco is a bit more affordable.
So the Emissary is a British-based Prosecco brand.
Yeah.
So is it made in the UK?
No, made in Italy.
Yeah, that's why you can call it Prosecco.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't call it Prosecco unless it's made in those two regions.
Great. So can we get stuck into some of these? That's the most important thing of this morning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. 9:50. Ben and Nana with you on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Now.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Today marks the first time a reigning British monarch has visited Australia for 13 years.
It will be the King's first time in the country since taking the throne, where he'll be welcomed by the Prime Minister at Parliament House in Canberra.
GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us live now from Down Under. Good morning or good evening, Cameron, whatever the time is there. What's the latest?
Well, Ben, it looks like King Charles has brought the British weather with him. That's probably the latest. It's pouring it down here in Sydney ahead of his arrival, which in theory is relatively soon. But of course, it is the first time, bit of trivia for you, that that a reigning king has ever stepped foot on Australia's soil. And in the last hour, the King and Queen have released a statement saying they are looking forward to visiting Australia, returning to Australia, and spending time with different communities. And they are expected to spend time with Indigenous leaders, as well as some of the great and good of Australia, as well as meeting ordinary citizens as well, and attending a community barbecue, because of course you've got to do that if you're in Australia, don't you? But it was a trip, a short 6-day trip, which, you know, if you look back 8 months ago, may not have happened, because of course we know that the King's been diagnosed with cancer. Now, doctors have allowed him to pause his cancer treatment while he is down under, but there's certainly still some uncertainty, and the trip has certainly been curtailed in order to make sure that he has enough time to rest and recuperate. For example, tomorrow no engagements are scheduled, even though the King Charles III Stakes is being raced at Randwick Racecourse here in Sydney, so there's going to be some pretty disappointed racegoers. New Zealand originally was on the cards for the King to visit as well. That has been scrapped. He's only visiting Sydney and Canberra, but there have been some engagements added. For example, the King will be meeting 2 cancer experts here in of the year who've done a lot of work to do with melanoma, a type of skin cancer, which is one of the most common forms of cancer here in Australia. But what do ordinary people think here in Australia of the King and Queen's visit? To be honest, it depends who you ask. Republicans are dubbing it the farewell tour of Oz, but then if you speak to some of the Australian Monarchist League, they are singing the King and Queen's praises. They wrote to the King and Queen ahead of their arrival in Sydney, and they claim thousands of signatures was on that letter, and we expect they're going to be handing out flags at various engagements as well. We spoke to some people on the streets earlier, and this is what they said.
Cameron, I'm going to ask you.
Oh, we don't have that. It's absolutely
away.
Chucking it down here in Sydney.
Cameron, I'm just going to ask you. On the 21st,
it does look like we're going to blow away, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I was going to ask you, on the 21st, there was supposed to be a reception with a lot of the premiers in Australia, and it turns out that most of them turned it down. Where do we stand with that? What's happening with that?
Yes, it's the political leader of each state here in Australia, and as you say, they have snubbed this engagement, this reception that was meant to be happening in Canberra for the King and Queen. Now, the Australian Monarchist League, Bev MacArthur, who's an MP here in Australia, she says that it's a bit of a slap in the face for King Charles, the fact that these state premiers, who clearly have all sworn allegiance to King Charles when they took office, do not want to come to this reception. Now, various excuses have been given, including the fact that they're at cabinet meetings or trade envoy meetings, for example. But this has been in the diary for months, and many monarchists are pointing out, you know, this could have been something that could have been prioritised, but Republicans saying that it would have been a big burden on the taxpayer to fly each state premier to Canberra simply for a reception. So it's a bit of an uneasy atmosphere, I would suggest. But of course, there's going to be plenty of other people welcoming King Charles to Australia.
Thank you very much. We'll catch up with you later.
Poor Cameron, gone to Australia and the sun's not out. Same as me last year. I went to cover Nigel in the jungle, and I was absolutely buzzing. I was going to get a tan, I was going to sunbathe, and yeah, raining all the time, so a lucky few. Still to come, the budget predictions are rolling in. This time it's rumoured inheritance tax is going to be changed. Will it affect you? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Aidan has your weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some poor visibility this morning, a foggy start for many. It then turns wet and windy from the west. Always windiest in the far northwest, where it's already turning wet and increasingly breezy through the morning. Those winds peaking at 50 to 60 miles an hour for the northwest of Scotland, accompanied by high tides, could cause some impacts. Turning cloudy across the rest of Scotland, Western England and Wales, with outbreaks of rain moving in. But once the fog clears across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, some decent sunshine and feeling pleasant, even as the breeze picks up later in the day. 16 or 17 Celsius in the southeast, 13 to 15 further north and west. And it is a cloudy, damp end to the afternoon across Wales and the southwest of England. The rain not that heavy at this point, but it is going to be increasingly windy through the Irish Sea. And that wind will affect Northern Ireland with some heavy rain at times. Western Scotland also seeing the heaviest rain during the afternoon and evening, whilst by this time the rain is approaching eastern Scotland and the far north. The rain moves through fairly quickly across western parts of the UK, but it will be heavy for a few hours into the evening and the first part of the night. Eventually it clears western Scotland and Northern Ireland with showers and clear spells following here, whilst it turns up across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England by dawn on Saturday. So with the cloud and the rain, it's going to be a mild start to Saturday with 13 or 14 Celsius by dawn. Fresher in the far northwest, some sunshine, albeit with a few showers following in, and a less windy day all in all. But the rain's slow moving across the Midlands and eastern England on Saturday itself, a damp day to come in many places. Brighter skies do follow into the west, albeit with a few showers. And that's all ahead of the next area of low pressure, which is likely to arrive on Saturday night and into Sunday as a deep low, bringing potentially disruptive winds.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The A74M in Dumfries and Galloway is blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 15 and 16 from Moffat to Johnston Bridge, causing queues towards Carlisle. Trains have been stopped between Lockerbie and Carstairs because of a signalling problem. Buses replaced trains between Hooton and Chester because of flooding. A number of road closures too because of flooding. In Powys, the A490 is closed each way off the A483. Coeda Dinas in Worcestershire, the A443 is closed each way between Erdiston and Newnham. The A4103 closed between Bransford and Rushwick. And in Herefordshire, the A438 is closed each way between Willersley and Mansell Gammage. In Pembrokeshire, the A478 is closed each way at Rosshill after an accident causing queues towards and away from Cardigan. In Northamptonshire, Geddington Road in Corby is closed because of a fire on the industrial estate. And in Suffolk, the A143 is blocked by an accident at Hundon. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We love making our audience big cash winners, and you really could be next with £36,000 tax-free cash in.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock, it's Friday the 18th of October, we're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and me, Nana Acquia.
Very good morning to you. Thanks for your company this morning. It's decision time. Tory leadership hopefuls Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick clashed in a bombshell GB News event last night discussing the ECHR, Brexit, immigration and, of course, their thoughts on Reform UK leader Nigel Farage.
He speaks with conviction. When people hear him speak, they believe that he understands their concerns. Some people will say, oh, you need to tack to the left, you need to tack to the right. It is not about left or right, it is about right or wrong.
Look, I think Nigel Farage is rattled. He's talking about me a lot now. He doesn't want someone to lead this party with my track record.
Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick have done battle on what might be the only leaders' debate before members decide. But who won?
And King Charles and Queen Camilla will land in Australia for their tour down under today. More on that to come.
Breaking news this morning. A baby has drowned in the English Channel after a small boat carrying migrants capsized.
And dramatic footage to show you in the next hour. The Hamas leader has been killed. World leaders hope an end to the fighting in the Middle East is getting closer as we see Yahya Sinwar's final moments here on screen. Mark White has the latest.
Well, it is the most astonishing development, and we're told that within the next hour, the Israeli War Cabinet will meet. Chief among the issues they'll be discussing is the possibility of a new deal to get those remaining 100 hostages back home.
Tributes from around the world continue to flow in for Liam Payne as One Direction release a heartfelt statement to their brother.
Fat jabs stop boozers. Weight loss jabs like Ozempic could soon be used to tackle binge drinking. But what are the health risks of these injections? What do you reckon then, Nana, of Liam Payne's sad passing in the week? I saw it. I felt pretty sad for him. He's a young guy with a 7-year-old child. But then I kind of thought, you know, what are you doing getting drugged up and...
Well, we don't know for sure. I mean, all we know is that they found a cocktail of prescription drugs in his hotel room and, you know, he was acting erratically, but we don't know the full details. But yeah, I'm sort of with you on that. You've literally got absolutely anything and everything, and then this happens. So I feel sad for him. It is sad, especially because he's got a child and things.
And I think it goes to show that regardless of how much money you've got, how much freedom you think you have, you still suffer. You know, you're not excluded from the kind of demons that affect a lot of us, you know, day in, day out. So money doesn't solve everything.
No, and it can make it a lot worse because everything is available to you. But what are your thoughts? Send us your views, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. 3 minutes past 10. The top story, and as we've been hearing this morning, Israel's year-long war with Hamas took a dramatic turn yesterday as the IDF killed Yahya Sinwar, the militant group's leader and believed mastermind behind last year's October the 7th attacks. Unaware of his identity at first, IDF forces stumbled across Sinwar during a Gaza operation, taking out Israel's most wanted man. While Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called it a major blow to Hamas, he's also warned the fight is, he says, far from over. Talks between Netanyahu and President Biden are currently focused on using this moment to free hostages and end the conflict. But Iran says the killing will strengthen resistance. Meanwhile, Hezbollah in Lebanon has also vowed to escalate its conflict with Israel. Here, the Chancellor is expected to announce £3 billion in welfare cuts over the next 4 years. The savings would come from reforming work capability rules and tightening eligibility for sickness benefits, initially a Conservative proposal. Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall will oversee the changes, aimed at moving around 400,000 long-term claimants towards employment. While Rachel Reeves plans to balance public finances with tax hikes and spending cuts, some ministers have voiced their concerns over government department budgets. The budget will be revealed on the 30th of October, with tax rises expected to feature prominently. Liam Payne's former One Direction bandmates say they're devastated and in a statement added they will miss him terribly. The 31-year-old died after falling from a hotel balcony in Buenos Aires. A post-mortem found the singer suffered multiple traumas from that fall, with police reporting his room, they say, was in complete disarray in the hotel. One Direction fans have been holding a candlelight vigil in Argentina, remembering him for his kind and funny and brave soul. Breaking news this morning that a baby has died after a migrant boat got into trouble in the English Channel. French authorities rescued 65 migrants and took them back to Boulogne with a French patrol boat and helicopter leading that operation. The baby was sadly found unconscious and later pronounced dead. Searches are still underway for any more missing people and an investigation is ongoing. It now means that so far this year, over 27,500 people have crossed the Channel. That's up 5% from last year. Barristers representing the Harrods Survivors Group have condemned the actions of Mohammed Al-Fayed after a report exposed new details of alleged abuse. Dean Armstrong Casey and his team have praised the bravery of former Fulham captain Ronnie Gibbons, who they say suffered horrific treatment under Al-Fayed's ownership. They're pledging to uncover further abuses and hold those involved accountable, no matter their role. The group will reveal more about Fulham Football Club next week and are urging others affected to contact them via their website. The body of former First Minister of Scotland, Alex Salmond, is set to be flown home later today. Businessman Sir Tom Hunter paid for a chartered flight to repatriate the Labour Party leader's body from North Macedonia, where he died of a heart attack on Saturday. The plane is expected to land in Aberdeen just before 2 o'clock this afternoon, with his family and some party colleagues receiving the coffin. Salmond, who was 69, passed away while attending a conference in Macedonia. His family have now asked for privacy at this time. Well, we've heard this morning that the SNP's chief executive has announced his resignation. After just over a year in that role, Murray Foot says he could no longer make the personal commitment required for the job. He's expected to remain in the role until a new chief executive is found. Criminals stole over £500 million through fraud in the first half of this year, according to UK Finance. Unauthorised fraud rose by 5%, with payment card scams up as card-not-present fraud surged. Despite that, losses from scams like romance and investment fraud did fall, with fewer people being tricked into transferring money. UK Finance says £126 million was returned to victims, with new rules making refunds mandatory for those scammed online. But they are warning the prevention is key, urging tech firms to do more to stop fraud at its source. And as you may have heard from our royal correspondent Cameron Walker in Sydney, King Charles and Queen Camilla are set to arrive in Australia for the start of an historic South Pacific tour. It marks Charles's first visit to the region as king and his first official overseas trip since being diagnosed with cancer earlier this year. The six-day tour will take them to Canberra and Sydney, with protests planned by anti-monarchy groups and state premiers reportedly skipping a reception in the capital. The King and Queen will also travel to Samoa for a Commonwealth summit, which King Charles will formally open later. Those are the latest headlines for now. Your next update from me in about half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Right, well, hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Ben Leo and me, Nana Quit. It's just coming up to 10 minutes after 10 o'clock.
Morning. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well on this Friday. Happy weekend as well. We're nearly there. A few emails flying in, not least from Brian. Good morning, Brian. You've said, referring to Graham Davies, who was the body language expert, the political presentation chap we just had on talking about Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, he described Jenrick's hand movements as an epileptic windmill. And Brian, you've said, epileptic windmill, how rude towards the unfortunate people who do suffer from epilepsy. There should be an apology.
Well, so we actually do apologise for that, because I understand how people might feel if they hear that. That's slightly offensive, but apologies for that.
And elsewhere, Saul, good morning. You say, Nana, Ben, who's paying for the 100 Labour staffers/activists to go and live in the USA while they canvass for Kamala Harris? And is Keir Starmer and David Lammy that scared of Trump winning that they send over staffers and activists? So if you weren't aware, so there was a Labour staffer who put on Facebook, if anyone's up for coming to the USA to canvass for Harris in the US election, let me know, and we're going to send 100 people over to the States to do so. Elon Musk got wind of this. He tweeted something like, isn't this illegal? Isn't this election interference? I don't think it is technically, because they're just staffers and activists. I think if MPs did it, that's where there's a problem.
It's a bit rich. Well, who's paying for it? That's what I want to know.
Yes,
I mean, who's paying for it? That's the question. And it just doesn't really sit well with me at all. Paul Shaw says Starmer is a disgrace and good reason to bring... Oh, no, maybe not. Perhaps not a good reason to bring that back.
Wait till 10 p.m. for that one.
Right. But, of course, very serious news, of course, because Israel's year-long war with Hamas took a dramatic turn yesterday as the IDF killed Yahya Sinwar, the group's leader and mastermind behind last year's attack.
Joining us now is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Good morning, Mark. Just extraordinary footage from this drone that's been released by the IDF overnight. What happened exactly?
Yeah, let's just show you the drone footage. It was towards the end of an encounter, a routine patrol that was taking place in the Rafah area of Gaza when soldiers had encountered what they describe as 3 terrorists. One of them headed into this bomb-damaged building, and he's there just sitting on one of those chairs just at the top end of the frame there. You can see him sort of move and look around. He's wearing a headscarf, very dusty, as the drone zooms in on him. You can see him highlighted there by the Israelis who made this footage available. And he picks up what's believed to be a wooden stick, his last defiant gesture as he tries to throw that stick at the drone. He's injured his right arm and is unable to move that. So he throws the stick with his left arm, and then basically just moments later, the drone, having captured these images, the IDF called in a tank strike and he was taken out. It was the next day when they discovered his body. I think that we may have another still image, actually, of the IDF soldiers gathered round Yahya Sinwar's body. We blurred the image of Yahya Sinwar's body. We don't have that image at that moment. But as the news filtered through very quickly, actually, to the Israeli public, you can imagine that there were scenes of jubilation throughout Israel. Let's just take a listen to some of those celebrations. And not just one town in northern Israel. This was repeated right across Israel because, you know, to the Israelis, Yahya Sinwar is their bin Laden, responsible for orchestrating the most horrific terrorist attack on October 7th last year, in which 1,200 people were slaughtered and more than 200 taken hostage. 100 of those hostages, of course, still unaccounted for.
All right, well, we'll keep following that story. But let's move on to something closer to home, the Channel crossing where a baby has drowned in the Channel as a result of being taken on one of those very flimsy, dangerous boats to try from France to get to the UK.
Yeah, this was an incident that unfolded last night as a boat was trying to leave Wissant Beach, which is halfway between Calais and Boulogne. It was offshore, got into difficulties. A number of people ended up in the water. There were 65 people packed onto this boat. Not unusual. That's what they do. You know, they try to jam as many people on the boats as possible. But then as rescuers pulled a number of people from the water, among them was a baby unconscious, and that baby, despite efforts to revive the baby, lost its life. So absolutely horrific and tragic, but by no means the first. We have had the worst year in terms of the loss of life in the English Channel since the small boats crisis began.
Are the parents of children who die in the Channel ever prosecuted? Are they ever found?
I don't think they are prosecuted, but, you know, there's a very pertinent point there about the reckless nature of deciding to take a very young child on what is a very dangerous voyage. Just a couple of weeks back, a 2-year-old child was also killed in the Channel. There have been numerous children killed over the past year. The fact is, about half of these boats that try to get to the UK get into difficulties, and the people on board have to be rescued out there. So you're taking children there from effectively a safe country, which is France, on what is, you know, undeniably a very dangerous, a treacherous journey across the Channel. You've got to feel sorry for the baby. You know, it's absolutely awful and tragic, but just so reckless of any parent to do that, however desperate they say they might be.
Completely irresponsible. And actually, we tend to get blamed, this country tend to get blamed for this, but actually the crossings need to stop, and I'd like to see real serious government action on it, rather than some border force command, which hasn't done anything. Really good to talk to you, Mark White. Thank you very much.
Yep, the do-gooders, the NGOs, the charities, the French, they've all got a lot to answer for. Anyway, let's move on, because last night the Conservative leadership candidates Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch battled it out at a special GB News event.
GB News political editor Christopher Hope is the man who chaired the debate, and he had this report.
Kemi Badenoch, will you call, please?
Heads.
Heads. Tails it is, Kemi Badenoch. Do you want to go first or second, Robert?
I'll go first, Chris.
And with that, the race to lead kicked off on GB News. Robert Jenrick would face questions from the Conservative members first, followed by Kemi Badenoch. And it's straight for Robert Jenrick on how to bring back the Reform voters.
That we tackled the biggest issues facing this country. And I think that does begin with migration. Because if we don't regain the public's trust on that issue, if we don't get back the millions of voters that we've lost to reform, we're just never going to be in government again.
It got spicy when talking about free speech.
The police have to enforce our existing laws without fear or favour. They must never allow a worry about community relations to stop fighting extremism.
Robert Jenrick's comments kept coming back to immigration and the ECHR.
So there's a clear choice here. It's leave or remain. And I'm for leave.
Christopher Chope has said today that Kemi Badenoch is preoccupied with her children. He says it's impossible to be a leader and a parent. Can a mum or a dad be that person and a leader?
Well, I hope so. I've got 3 kids myself. So I think he was wrong. He was definitely wrong.
The issue of slavery reparations is coming up. There's a meeting of the Commonwealth leaders next week. Should we pay slavery reparations for our imperial past?
No, absolutely not.
Then it was the turn of Kemi Badenoch. I asked if her pitch was based on principles but not policies, and if this was a problem.
I am not here to impose just what's in my head on everyone in the party. That is not what it needs. That is not how we unite the party. I know so many of you are tired and sick of the infighting and the squabbling. It happens when we don't get a consensus before we start proposing things to the public.
So where does she stand on ECHR withdrawal?
If we need to leave the ECHR in order to control migration, we should leave it. But it is not a silver bullet. It's not even the most radical thing that we can do.
Kemi Badenoch was asked by one of the members of the audience if it was time to end the culture wars.
It depends on who started these so-called culture wars.
They say you may have started it.
No, I don't think so. A lot of these things were happening long before Conservatives started speaking about them. I am worried about the way people talk about the history of this country.
But what does she think about being accused by a Tory MP that she can't be a mother of 3 and a leader?
Of course you can. I love my children. I have the most beautiful children in the world. I want to spend as much time with them as possible. I said to all of you that family was one of my key principles. I was able to be a great business secretary and trade secretary and equalities minister, effectively doing 3 jobs while balancing my home life. If I can do that, I can do this too.
And we did get some policies out of Kemi Badenoch in the end. Labour's putting VAT on private school bills from January. Would you reverse it if you become Prime Minister?
OK, so...
It's a policy.
I know it is a policy, so I feel bad because I have to slightly change what I said. That is the very first thing that I will do if I become Prime Minister.
But crucially, what did the members think?
I think it was a tie, actually. But for me, I think Jenrick just about.
Yeah, I think Kemi, I think she's absolutely great.
At the end of the day, I have a feeling neither of them will become Prime Minister.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the thing is, neither of them are going to appeal to the electorate. We lost more votes to Labour than we did to Reform.
Christopher Hope, GB News, Westminster.
All right, well, Christopher Hope joins us now. Christopher, you've got about a minute. So what was your verdict on the end of all of that?
Yeah, we did a poll, didn't we, at the end? Morning, Ben, morning, Dan. I did a poll amongst those in the audience. It looked about 2/3, 1/3 split for Kemi Badenoch. I think it became very clear the choice that members are making this weekend. They've got the ballot papers arrived, sent out on Tuesday. They're now with them, voting online and by post. What you're getting there is Kemi Badenoch is offering a kind of a principles space, good vibes, vote for me, you trust me to do the right thing by you. Robert Jenrick is offering clear policy issues, and the question for the party is, do you want to tie yourself into policies now or develop them and have them by the election, and will the electorate wait for you, and do you trust that person who won't say what she'll do but she says, trust me, I'm a right winger? That was fascinating, I think, and I think that Robert Jenrick is trying to say, no, here are some policies on ECHR, cutting income tax when we can afford it, that kind of thing. So you've got a very tight policy schedule from Robert Jenrick and a more broad brush principles feel from Kemi Badenoch. I think that she offers a chance here for the Tory party maybe to feel good about itself again. The answer she gave, though, on the imperial past of this country, she was saying, stop being embarrassed about it. I'm a black woman born outside of the UK. And almost I think that's part of the appeal of Kemi Badenoch. She's saying, don't feel embarrassed about where you've come from, be proud of this country. And maybe that's what Tory members were warming to.
OK, Chopper, great work last night. Thank you for joining us this morning. We'll catch up later in the show. Yeah, it was interesting. I reckon the Reform probably won last night because you've got Badenoch, who's got One Nation vibes about her. You've got Jenrick, who wants to leave the ECHR but probably can't because half the party's not on board. So they're still in a bit of a mess, you know. Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. And you can catch up on last night's event by going to gbnews.com or scanning the QR code that's on your screen right now.
Right, up next, a baby dies in a migrant crossing after small boats get in trouble off the French coast. I mean, how do we stop this needless loss of life? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, our next guests have been working closely with celebrities and MPs to help clean up our planet.
Very important. Think Ocean was founded in 2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good to see you both this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment and climate change. So he founded the organisation and I joined him with three goals, really. Education, looking at technology to scale solutions and looking at how we develop more circular economy programmes. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. You know, this is not much interest from the bigger players or, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's fast approaching 26 minutes after 10 o'clock. Good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Ben Leo and me, Nana Akwe. Joining us now as well, political commentator Emma Trimble and author and commentator Nishi Hodgson. Right, all right, let's start with the baby dying on this migrant boat, Emma.
Yes, so, I mean, this is another story of a tragedy in the Channel, I think, because it's a baby especially. We've already heard Mark White talking about there, the sort of, I mean, the irresponsibility of putting a baby on a boat to make such a dangerous journey. But the reality is that this is, a lot of people will use this as an example of, you know, how heartless our immigration policy is and how we, you know, should be softer on immigration rather than tougher. Actually, I think that this is yet another example of why it's important for us to crack down on these channel crossings, because they are dangerous and we're not in control of what parents decide to do with their children in making these crossings. If we can't stop the boats from crossing, we can't stop people from putting their children on these boats. The solution isn't to incentivise more of these journeys by being soft on immigration. I think this is yet further evidence of why it's important for us to crack down, and actually why the government's so wrong to have scrapped the Rwanda plan when it could have functioned as something of a deterrent, because they haven't replaced it with anything else. And all they've done is send the message that actually we are, you know, soft, we have porous borders, we effectively don't have a border. We saw that footage of a migrant who seems to have gotten into the country. It's not entirely clear whether he has from Albania, Madapasa, who was, it seemed, threatening Nigel Farage's life. We just simply do not have a border, and this is the sort of thing that will happen if we don't have control over our borders.
Nikki, who's to blame for this child's death last night? Not least the parents, but beyond the parents, who's to blame?
It's just one of those tragedies. I mean, look, I'm the first person to be pro-immigration and not pro-channel crossings, but pro more legal routes to disincentivise the channel crossings. You know, we desperately need skilled and non-skilled workers in so many sectors. We've got an employment crisis. We've got people we can't get into work. I don't see what the problem is with filling vacancies with migrants and doing it in a legal way.
But do you really think that the people who are getting across via the channel will do it the legal way? It's all very nice and a nice...
But they can't, that's the point, isn't it?
But in a nice utopia... Then there are ways, actually. But in a nice utopia of a world, you know, there are places where people can apply for visas and things like that. A lot of the people coming from countries like Vietnam, for example, well, there's no issue there. They could apply for a visa here. Why don't they?
Well, it depends on the person, doesn't it? Well,
so
we don't. I mean, but we don't know in this case. We don't know the nationality of the baby or the parents, do we?
Well, that's not really.
It is relevant,
really,
though, Nana, because we
France, aren't they?
But no, but they're not coming from France because they're escaping something, aren't they?
France.
They obviously think something in their homeland is so terrible that they won't give their child to that country, like they won't take that risk.
So why don't they stay in France? Why don't they come here?
Because maybe they've got more affiliation with Britain.
Well,
maybe they speak English.
Well, unfortunately, that is not a good enough reason to enter a country legally.
Look, but you the problem.
Put a baby on a boat.
But the problem is we don't have enough legal routes, and we need migration. We need certain kinds of migrants, and we are not helping them to come to this country.
Hold on a sec. Which migrants do we need?
We desperately need skilled migrants for the NHS. We desperately need that. 40,000 vacancies.
Do you think the people on the boat are skilled
migrants? I've got no idea, Nana. Without that information, I can't make a judgment.
They're not,
but the point is, if somebody is desperate, if we were desperate, we would do the same.
Not from France, no.
Why not?
I would not put my child on a dinghy to go from France to the UK because I'd rather be in the UK.
But we don't know what they were told in France. Maybe they were told they were going to be deported, hence why they moved on.
No, they weren't told they were deported.
But we don't know that, Nana.
It's not true, you know.
Nikki, can I ask you? You said we should help these people. Why should we help these people?
Out of humanity, out of caring, out of compassion.
Okay. We're just going to cut live to Australia. This is the plane carrying King Charles and Queen Camilla, who have just touched down in Sydney. Our man Cameron Walker is on the ground. Not sure if we've got him, but this is the jet that's arrived from Great Britain. A pretty long flight, Nana, actually.
It's about a day, isn't it? You arrive a day behind, a day ahead of the day you've left. So it's like, I'm having this day again.
Groundhog Day.
Deja vu.
But the doctors have, of course, given the King the green light to travel to Australia in light of his cancer diagnosis and recovery. So it's going to be an epic 6-day trip. I think they're then going... where are they going afterwards?
Well, on the 21st, they had that invite for the premiers across Australia, which a lot of people have declined. In fact, all of them declined.
Yeah.
So I think that it will be mainly them talking to those who are sort of amenable to the royal family, because it seems that after all that stuff with Meghan and Harry, I'm not blaming them entirely, but I think that has cast a spanner in the works, and a lot of people sort of starting to look negatively towards the Commonwealth, which is sad.
Yeah, and of course in January, Australia scraps a planned referendum on the monarchy. PM Anthony Albanese said that they may do it again later next year or perhaps in a couple of years, but they said in anticipation of this very trip where the King and Queen are arriving now in Australia, they would hold that referendum on being part of the Commonwealth until a couple of years' time. Who's that through the window there?
You'll never know.
If you're listening on radio, we've got a zoomed-in shot of the jet, and Cameron Walker's there now. Cameron, I hope you're a bit drier. This is the dramatic landing of the King and Queen. How's it going?
Oh, I can't hear him. All I can hear is... Right, so, well, listen, so obviously Cameron Walker is there. We will get a live from Cameron as soon as we can. But what we've got here is a plane. We've gone right and zoomed into the windows to see if we can see some faces or who that might be on the plane. I mean, I doubt they're sitting there in their seats. They're probably moving on. Right, let's see if we can get hold of Cameron Walker right now. He is live in Australia. Cameron Walker, can you hear us?
Good evening. Yes, hopefully you can hear me. I'll keep talking until you tell me you can't. Yep. But this is the Australian Air Force plane that had picked up the royal couple from Singapore airport earlier on this morning. The King and Queen have landed in Sydney. It is a historic visit, the first time, of course, that King Charles has visited Australia as head of state. He's also going to be, when his feet stand on that tarmac, going to be the first ever reigning king to step foot on Australian soil. His mother was the first monarch to step foot on Australian soil. He, of course, is the first king. It's a very wet arrival, I'm afraid, for His Majesty the King. He seems to have brought the British weather with him. The Sydney Opera House behind me was also meant to be lit up with pictures of King Charles's 15 previous official visits to Australia, but that has not happened as of yet. We don't have any details as to why. Perhaps it's the weather, perhaps they're worried to block it, but we can just see, if you're watching on television now, the steps leading up to that Australian Air Force aircraft. When the King and Queen disembark, they're going to be greeted by the Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia, Her Excellency the Honourable Miss Sam Mostyn, and her husband, His Excellency Mr Simeon Beckett, who you can see in that lineup there. It looks like it's not raining at the moment, so hopefully they are going to stay dry. But clearly this is very formal. This is a very formal welcome for the King and Queen here in Sydney this evening. It's all going to be very much prepared. It's been in the planning for months, this tour. Of course, there was a huge question mark whether if it was going to happen at all because of the King's cancer diagnosis, and the King's doctors have allowed him to pause his cancer abroad here in Australia for the 9-day visit, or 6-day visit, I should say, for Australia. He's going to be visiting Sydney, Canberra, but tomorrow this is going to be the only glimpse we're going to get of King Charles tonight, other than a very informal cup of tea, I'm told, with the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. And that's only going to be a still image, we believe. So these live pictures are going to... You can just see Anthony Albanese there, actually, the Australian Prime Minister, walking across the tarmac towards the Australian aircraft, but it's going to be a very brief engagement for the King here this evening, and then we're not going to see him again until Sunday, we don't think, because of his cancer diagnosis, he's having a whole day to rest and recuperate, because of course he's been on the plane for pretty much 24 hours now. He was spotted at Heathrow Airport yesterday, boarding a commercial flight actually from Heathrow to Singapore, and it's there where, according to the Sun newspaper, he met up with the Queen, who was on a private holiday really to this part of the world, and they therefore both got on this Australian Air Force plane this morning and has now landed in Sydney. So the King and Queen will just be preparing to disembark. Also people in that lineup you can see, as I said, the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, the Governor-General of Australia and her husband. We're also expecting Her Excellency the Honourable Margaret Beazley. She is the Governor of New South Wales, which is of course where Sydney is, and we are expecting some others, the Deputy Secretary and some other politicians in this lineup.
Well, so it's going to be very interesting to see how... The last thing you need when you get off a plane is like a load of a film crew watching you disembark. Because, you know, I always feel a bit rough having travelled. I mean, they've been travelling all day. But in the studio, Nikki Hodgson and also Emma Trimble are also joining us. Nikki, I mean, seriously, there's a lot of focus on them, but you wouldn't want to get out of the plane, everyone's sort of all eyes on you.
Absolutely not. I do that journey regularly, by the way, because my family live in Australia, and the last thing you want to do is be seen by anyone apart from the people that love you when you get off. The idea of a film crew being there would fill me with absolute dread. You just feel absolutely horrific as well.
Oh, here they are. The doors are opening. This could be the moment where we get to see them. Emma, do you feel the Australians, you know, they almost feel like they're rejecting our monarchy?
Well, they've had an ongoing debate about whether or not they should be a republic, and this trip is obviously coming in the midst of that. King Charles has already said that it's up to the people whether or not they want a republic, which is sort of de facto the case. It would be very difficult for him to resist it if they held a referendum and decided otherwise. But I don't think that there's necessarily evidence that the Australian people don't want King Charles to be their head of state. And in fact, actually, it may be the case that this trip, as it has done in other places like Canada, you know, bolsters his position as head of state, because so many people are going to be coming out to see him.
Well, do you know who's on the King's curtails in Australia? Graham Smith of Republic, which is the anti-monarchy group here in the UK. They've travelled to Australia following the King and Queen, arranging protests in Canberra and Sydney. I think this is the King's private security at the door of the plane. Are we going to go back to Cameron? No, he's not ready. So the doors are open. That's the King's private security. As Cameron said, the Australian PM Anthony Albanese is there, and Cameron's ready. Let's throw to Cameron on the ground.
Here he is.
That's the King Charles.
Well, of course, the King and Queen have not quite yet disembarked the Australian Air Force flights, but I do suspect that it is very imminent indeed. And here are the King and Queen arriving on Australian soil. For the first time, reigning monarch has stepped foot on Australian soil in 11. King Charles visited a few years ago, but then, of course, he was Prince Charles, and perhaps this tour is a bit of an echo of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II's first visit to Australia as Queen way back in 1954, because it was a year after her coronation that she visited the realm, and it is a year after King Charles's coronation that he is visiting this realm. And it is his first visit to an overseas territory, overseas realm even, I should say, since he ascended the throne back in September 2022. Queen Camilla there with a see-through umbrella trying to keep dry. The King seems to be powering on through, not needing an umbrella. This is a historic moment for His Majesty the King. There he is, the first ever reigning king to step foot on Australian soil, greeting there the Governor-General of Australia, the Miss Sam Mostyn, and her husband, His Excellency Damien Beckett. This is a lineup which perhaps if it was half an hour before wouldn't have happened outside, because it was absolutely chucking it down. There's Margaret Beazley there. She is the Governor of New South Wales, and there are a number of politicians, including the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, who famously has wanted to become a republic or hold a referendum on becoming a republic, but his government shelved those plans earlier this year after his government lost a separate vote on giving more political rights to the Aboriginal population here in Australia. And since then, those plans to hold a republic referendum were held. It's not a priority for Albanese's government right now, but the King will not be thinking about any of the Republican protests, which are perhaps scheduled to happen over the next 6 days. His focus will very much be on his public engagements. He says in a statement in the last hour or so, while he was on a flight from Singapore, that he's incredibly excited to immerse himself in the different Australian communities here in the country. He will be meeting some Indigenous groups. He will also be meeting some Australians of the Year, some cancer experts, melanoma experts, who have done work around that field of melanoma, the most common form of cancer in Australia. And of course, the King himself has been diagnosed with cancer, an undisclosed form of cancer, but doctors have allowed him to pause his cancer treatment while he is in Australia for this historic visit. But of course, as perhaps you would expect, some details have been changed. For example, he was expected to visit New Zealand in the early stages of the planning for this trip. That is no longer happening. He is also going to be visiting Samoa after Australia for 6 days or so, and you may be able to see there a bouquet of flowers to the Queen. Now, that little boy is actually a boy from the Make-A-Wish, the charity which gives big kind of things to children who are seriously ill. So a special moment for him. The King and Queen are still meeting as many of the invited dignitaries as possible on the tarmac at Sydney Airport.
All right, that's Cameron Walker. He's live there. Apologies for some of that flash photography. But there you have it. It's a live. The King and Queen arriving in Australia. Emma, very quickly to you.
On that point about the Republic that we were discussing earlier, and you mentioned these Republican activists who are going out there to sort of trail King Charles around Australia. We've just seen the story breaking that 100 or so Labour activists or former Labour staffers have gone out to America to campaign for Kamala Harris's campaign, which strikes me as election interference. And I actually think that, as King Charles said, which I think is a very respectful position as monarch, that it's up to the people of Australia to decide whether you agree with that or not. It's at least a respectful position. But to go out to somebody else's country and to try and interfere with what may be a referendum on something as fundamental as a constitutional point.
Somebody's just tweeted me now, because we mentioned it previously. Ruth Cadbury, who's the Labour MP for Brentford and Isleworth, she's the chair of the Transport Committee in Parliament. She is on the ground now in America, parading Harris Waltz placards, knocking doors. She said on her Facebook or Twitter, "What does one do after the Labour Party conference? I've taken myself to do a bit of work to stop Trump winning. Door knocking yesterday with the Harris Waltz team in swing state New Hampshire, along with Senate candidate Wayne Horbner, blah, blah, blah." This is outrageous. Elon Musk tweeted about it this morning, saying this is illegal and election interfering.
But who's paying for these people to get on this plane? I'm wondering, are the Labour Party paying for it?
Is it taxpayer money?
Is it taxpayer money? That's the question.
I mean, the interesting thing about the Australia question is that they themselves don't seem to be too bothered about it.
No.
And also, they won't want to give up their extra public holidays, because did you know they get more than we do? They get a holiday for the King's birthday. They definitely won't want to give up that.
Yeah, so you think that the rule... Yeah, but overall, I mean, do you feel that there should be a call for maybe getting rid of the King of Head of State there in Australia?
I mean, I think most people don't really care that much because they don't have that much reverence for him. But it should be referendum. Of course it should. That's process.
But
That's due process.
they've had one already. I mean, is it just referendums until you get the answer that you want?
Well, that's what
sometimes.
I mean, that's what they keep doing with trying to bring in a rule to say that Aboriginal people are the first people. You know, that will keep going because people are so sensitive about it. But I think with the monarchy, it's completely different. They just don't care enough.
Charles and Camilla will attend a barbecue next week. It says here a staple of Australian culture. Who knew that? And they'll also spend time in the capital, Canberra, meeting leading figures and paying their respects to the country's fallen. And Charles will meet college professor Georgina Long, who was named as Australia's Person of the Year 2024 in recognition of the pivotal work on melanoma, skin cancer.
It's desperate times when you're actually talking about somebody going to a barbecue and that becomes news. But they are the royal family.
I hope it's got some floral shirts with them.
Thank you very much, Nikki Hodgson, and also Emma Trimble. Well, it's just coming up to 45 minutes after 10 o'clock. Up next, not only does the fat jab help you lose weight, apparently now it can also help you stop boozing too. There must be some serious side effects. Well, who knows? We'll find out more. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Some controversial film news. Someone has hired an actor who's white. What the hell is going on?
Let me just fix my hair. Let me just come away. So, Wuthering Heights film stirs controversy after white actor, he's white, chosen to play Heathcliff.
Is that your Humza Yusuf impersonation?
That is, but yes, that's my Chinese accent. Experts have gone, oh no, there's a lot of, in recent years, he's definitely black or mixed race because he was found in Liverpool. And as you know, everybody in Liverpool is black or mixed race.
No, I mean, have you read the novel?
God, no.
Right, well, I have. And the novel itself does say, quite explicitly, that he is dark-skinned. Yeah. That the implication is that he's of Romani origin. So he wouldn't be whiter than white, you know. So, I mean...
that's fine. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that casting... But on the other hand...
This guy's Spanish. His origin's Spanish.
Do you remember when there was a black Anne Boleyn for a Channel 5 miniseries? That seems to be more egregious, because, I tell you what, Anne Boleyn definitely wasn't black.
You racist. No, I almost feel sorry of this story because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't now. Because if they'd have, like, it's not like he's a bit of an anti-hero, right? It's not like a good all-round.
He's not a good guy.
So if you go, right, we definitely need to cast someone black for this. What? Why are you picking just black people to play someone with so many character flaws? Or you go, why?
Like they did with Darth Vader.
Yes, that's right.
He was played by the Green Cross Code Man. Okay. Just the voice was done by...
That's true. Yeah. Yes, it was the Green Cross Code Man. I wonder what they were saying there.
Have you ever seen the videos of the original audio of Star Wars?
No.
So you've got... I can't remember his name, but you've got the Green Cross Code Man going like, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Yeah. No, Luke, I am your father.
They should have left it as it was.
This is the difference between me. We're talking about Star Wars. You're like, oh, have you read Bronte, Wuthering, whatever?
She only wrote one novel, Josh. You could... do with the courtesy of reading it.
I'll read it straight after I finish your one.
And it's actually brilliant.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. 10:48, Ben and Nana with you on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Now, could weight loss drugs really help people stop binge drinking?
Well, according to health experts, medications such as Ozempic could be effective as they target parts of the brain which control addictive behaviour.
Researchers found that weight loss drugs used to treat obesity and type 2 diabetes led to a 50% lower rate of intoxication than those who did not take them.
So, are weight loss drugs the silver bullet to cure binge drinking? Joining us in the studio now is pharmacist Toran Govind. Thank you for joining us. Good morning. These drugs, Ozempic and the like, seem to be some sort of miracle cure for this, that and every ailment. Is it too good to be true? What are the side effects?
I think we need to be really careful getting too excited about all of these drugs, to be honest, because we are hearing some great benefits from them. But even with this is not in clinical... You know, we need more clinical trials, we need more studies. And just whilst we look at this and we think, oh, it's absolutely fantastic, there's other things that we need to think of when we're supporting people with binge drinking, for example. We need to be thinking about the counselling options available to them. We need to be thinking about what other support we can provide to them, because it's not just about that behaviour, is it?
Well, OK, so the Ozempic works with this GLP-1, right? And that's the thing that tells you you're full. But that's why I presume they're saying that it could work with binge drinking, because it will tell you don't need any more booze, you're fine.
What they're thinking is it could basically impacts your brain, so it impacts that addictive behavioural element of binge drinking. But I think we've got a bigger problem in society around alcohol, I think. But a lot of people are not drinking alcohol as much as they used to. And I think there's a lot more people who are, going sober some of the week, or they're thinking about their alcohol intake quite a lot more. But that doesn't mean that those who are dealing with the binge elements don't need to be supported.
Could it not be used to treat addiction then as an overall concept? Because obviously, if you're really, really fat, it's because you eat too much. The drug proves it. So you're obviously addicted to food. If you're drunk, it's because you're addicted to alcohol. If you're a drug user, it's because you're addicted. Is the actual narrative for Ozempic something that could stop addiction rather than focusing purely on weight?
That's what I think we need, and they are looking into. That's what we need to be looking into more. But again, I keep coming back to the fact this is not a cure-all for everything. We can't just have people thinking that they can go on this and it's going to cure every ailment. We need to make sure we've got some really good, solid lifestyle, lifestyle choices that we're doing. And we've talked before about Zumba. We're going to get a Zumba. We're going to do some Zumba on this show.
Zumba class.
Yeah.
I remember those from back in the day.
I used to teach when I was an instructor. What are the actual side effects, the drawbacks?
Yeah,
like,
so drawbacks.
Can it affect your pancreas? What can it do?
Yeah,
What's
so it can
about
impact your pancreas. It can have impacts. So you might feel like nausea and vomiting. There has been some people have looked into suicidal ideation as well. That's what I would say to people is, please, as well, do not go and get this from online marketplaces, because that's my biggest fear at the moment. People, because they're trying to get this, and we have shortage issues with some of this medication as well. So it's not just it's going to fix for patients. We have shortages of these drugs, so we're trying to also make sure that the drugs are available for diabetics as well. So do not go online and try and get hold of these from unregulated places, because you don't know what you're getting.
Were you kind of alluding to the, it's kind of a sticking plaster. You're solving the weight issue, you're solving the binge drinking issue, but I guess, maybe I'm wrong, but I understand most people get addicted to something, food or drugs, alcohol, because they're running away from something else. They're trying to mask maybe some trauma. Is your point that, yes, it might fix the addiction, but doesn't solve the reason for the addiction?
Yeah, I think that's a part of it. As I say, we've got more trials to go through with this, but when it comes to addiction, there are other elements in people's lives that may be going on. In fact, some people who suffer from certain health conditions can also have addiction as an element of that. So I don't think we can just look at this and think, oh, quick fix all for everything.
Isn't the problem that once you start on this, you are now addicted to this? Because now you can't stop it. So in terms of weight loss, if you do it for weight loss, of course, you lose all your muscle mass, and then the fat stores come in, you stop taking it, you get fatter.
Well, I think people need to be very mindful that actually, no, these drugs are not for long term, and you can get rebound, weight gain after you stop taking them. But that's because we need to get the lifestyle approaches in place. So, it helps you bring down your weight, but we help get those measures in place so you're not on it long term.
And same, I presume, for booze as well. If they...
Again, I'm hoping that they're going to continue to do some more research into this, because when it comes to binge drinking, it is something that impacts not just you as an individual, it can impact your wider family and a wider society. So anything that we can, that is there, part of our armour, I think this is, but it's not the full fix-all.
All right.
OK.
All right. Thorin Govin, thank you very much.
Thanks, Thorin.
Right. Well, still to come, England cricket will ban transgender players at elite levels. I mean, seriously.
So that is biological men wanting to compete in female sports. They're banning it at a professional level. I think at grassroots it's still allowed.
But it's ridiculous, though. I mean, look, I get it.
Well, you think it should be banned or not?
Well, no, I just think that it's ridiculous that it was even a concept in the first place. Men playing against women in physically sort of demanding sport, which can, like, for example, weight training and things like that.
Yeah, but Nana, they're women.
They're not women, though, are they? And a man can never be a woman can never be a man. And when it comes to sport, it's about bodies, it's not about how you feel, it's about the reality of putting one against another. And if a man is clearly a lot stronger than a woman, then any most sports, and in particular contact sports, it's a nonsense.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There is a biological difference between men and women. Men on the majority are stronger, more powerful, quicker. You know, they shouldn't be playing in female sports.
A man
anyway.
can never be a woman can never be a man. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel. Aidan has your weather.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. After a misty start in places, it's turning increasingly unsettled with rain at times, strengthening winds, and Storm Ashley arrives on Sunday. Now, at the present time, Storm Ashley is on the other side of the Atlantic as a weak area of low pressure, but it deepens rapidly during Saturday. And by Sunday, it's bringing disruptive winds to many western and northern parts of the country. Ahead of that, a different low is bringing the potential for disruption for the northwest of Scotland through the rest of today, 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and high tides with coastal flooding a possibility. Also some heavy rain in the far northwest. That rain edging into western England and Wales by the end of the day, but we keep the sunshine after the fog clears across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. So an unsettled end to the day for Scotland as bands of heavy rain move across the country. Drier towards the east, but the more persistent rain is heading eastwards across the country, and Northern Ireland just sees it clearing through the evening, whilst Wales and Western England sees some outbreaks of mostly light rain at first before the heavier band of rain moves in by the end of the evening. So lively night to come with wet and windy weather across western and northern parts of the country, and then that transferring into the Midlands and eastern parts of England by dawn. Clearing skies for Scotland and Northern Ireland will allow temperatures to dip into the low single figures in some spots as the winds ease, but it's a milder night for England and Wales with cloud and wind first thing. Those outbreaks of rain across the Midlands, eastern England and the far southeast continue for much of the morning, but eventually peel away during the afternoon. Brighter skies to come for the rest of the UK, albeit with a few showers, and then it turns wet and windy again overnight as Storm Ashley arrives.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
That's what I'm talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. Hope you're well. It's 11 a.m. on Friday, October the 18th. Live across the UK, this is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Nana Akweer.
Good morning to you. Cracking my voice. King Charles and Queen Camilla have landed in Australia for their tour down under today. Lots more. We will bring you all of that as it happens.
And to the Middle East, the Hamas leader has been killed. World leaders hope it will bring an end to the fighting in Israel and Gaza, as we saw dramatic footage of Yahya Sinwar's final moments here on screen.
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister has said that there is no end to the war for the time being, but the War Cabinet is meeting, and chief among the topics, we understand, is the possibility of renewed negotiations to free the 100 hostages still being held by Hamas.
Decision time. Tory leadership hopefuls Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick clashed in a GBNews event last night. Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick can't find common ground on the controversial topic of leaving the European Convention of Human Rights.
There's a clear choice here. It's leave or remain. And I'm for leave.
I think that the ECHR argument is not the right one. I think that is the biggest weakness. I think it will divide our party. It will mean that the infighting and squabbling will continue. If we want to end the drama, we need to do this the right way. Let's come to a consensus.
Cricket trans ban. Transgender women, biological men, will be banned from professional and semi-professional women's cricket in England, but not from the grassroots game. Interesting. Let us know what you think about that. gbnews.com/your say. Some would argue, Nana, that cricket isn't really a physical sport, so trans women are okay to play in it?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, like, imagine you've got a bigger hand, you've got a bigger body, you've got a bat, and you've got to whack the ball. I mean, look, the women have got to catch the ball hit by a big man who's saying that he feels like a woman. Well, you're not a woman. That's the bottom line. So it should be any physical sports, men and women, where there is any level of sort of combat, should never be competing together. And, you know, cricket, I mean, imagine if you know, even if they bump into each other or whatever, it's, no.
Yeah, it's a good point. Actually, cricket can be quite a physical sport. They're bowling those bowls at up to, I think, 100 miles an hour, maybe even more. So if you're a smaller woman against a biological man who's got some guns on him and he can lob a ball or bowl a ball at speed and power, you're probably going to be in trouble.
Well, you are, and then he says he's a woman because he's wearing a dress or whatever, or wearing the...
Well, it's in his passport.
It's not...
He's got an F.
It's still not good enough, really,
got an
when
F.
it comes to sports. It's bodies against bodies, and a man cannot be a woman cannot be a man. But what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It is just coming up to 4 minutes past 11. And the top story this hour, barristers representing the Harrods survivors group have condemned what they've described as the horrible and the monstrous abuse at the hands of Mohammed Al-Fayed after a report has exposed new allegations at Fulham Football Club. Dean Armstrong KC and his team have praised the bravery of the former Fulham women's captain, Ronnie Gibbons, who's accused the billionaire of sexual assault during her time at the club, aged just 20 years old. Her claims are part of a wider investigation by the Metropolitan Police into 40 new allegations of sexual misconduct against Al-Fayed and others. Investigators say they are going to and have pledged to uncover further abuses and hold those involved accountable, no matter, they say, the role of those involved. Fulham Football Club and Harrods have both condemned the allegations and are urging anyone affected to come forward. Well, as we've just heard, King Charles and Queen Camilla have touched down in Australia for historic royal tour. The couple landed in Sydney moments ago. You can see there the moments King Charles and Queen Camilla stepped out of that aircraft down the steps, sadly into some wet weather. But the Queen was greeted with a warm welcome and a bouquet of flowers. It's His Majesty's first trip to Australia as king and his first official overseas trip since being diagnosed with cancer earlier this year. Let's just take you live now to Sydney, where you can see the Royal Opera House lit up with photos of the King and Queen. Beautiful pictures there in the night sky around 9 o'clock now in Sydney. The King and Queen will be spending 6 days touring Canberra and Sydney before heading to Samoa for a state visit and a Commonwealth summit, which King Charles will formally open. Their tour schedule has, though, been scaled back on doctors' advice, with the New Zealand visit cancelled. Israel's year-long war with Hamas took a dramatic turn yesterday as the IDF killed Yahya Sinwar, the militant group's leader and mastermind behind last year's October the 7th attacks. Unaware of his identity at first, the IDF forces stumbled, they say, across Sinwar during a Gaza operation, taking out Israel's most wanted man. While Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called it a major blow to Hamas, he has warned the fight is far from over. Talks between Netanyahu and President Biden are currently focused on using this moment to free hostages at the end of the conflict. But Iran says the killing will only strengthen resistance. Meanwhile, Hezbollah in Lebanon has also vowed to escalate its conflict with Israel. Well, just turning to some breaking news coming into us this hour. As we were reporting yesterday, North Korea believed to be sending its troops to enter the war against Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky had, of course, been saying that up to 10,000 North Korean specialists were being prepared to enter the war against his country. Well, in the last few moments, we have heard from the Reuters news agency that the South Korean spy agency are confirming those reports as spoken by the President Volodymyr Zelensky. South Korea saying they have used facial recognition to identify North Korean soldiers moving to Russia. They are also saying that artillery shells, anti-tank missiles and rockets have been sent to the front lines, and added that North Korean troops who are now in Russia have been provided, they say, with Russian military uniforms, Russian arms and fake Russian IDs. So that information just coming into us from the South Korean spy agency, confirming, it appears, reports from the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Here, the Chancellor is expected to announce £3 billion in welfare cuts over the next 4 years. The savings would come from reforming work capability rules and tightening eligibility checks for sickness benefits. Initially, a Conservative proposal. Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall will oversee the changes aimed at moving around 400,000 long-term claimants towards employment. While Rachel Reeves plans to balance public finances with tax hikes and spending cuts, ministers have voiced some concerns over departmental budgets. The budget will be revealed on the 30th of October, with tax rises expected to feature prominently. And finally, singer-songwriter Ed Sheeran has urged people to be kind as he paid tribute to Liam Payne following his death, aged 31. Musicians and famous faces have been remembering the One Direction star after police in Argentina confirmed he fell and died from a third-floor balcony of a hotel in Buenos Aires. A post-mortem found the singer suffered multiple traumas from that fall, with police also reporting his room was in complete disarray. Well, One Direction fans have continued to hold candlelight vigils in Argentina, remembering Liam, they say, for his kind, his funny and brave soul. That's the latest from me for now. I'll be back with you in around half an hour for another update.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sam, and a very good morning to you at home. Thank you for joining us this morning on Britain's Newsroom. It's 11:08. I'm Ben Leo, and this is Nana Akweer. Lots of you sending in your thoughts on gbnews.com/your say. Nana, have you got a couple?
I've got one from Humpty. He says, we were talking about men and women and cricket and sport, and he said, I agree with cricket banning trans women in senior women's cricket. I played sport at international level, and even though I would class myself as a relatively good, even club level boys, but even at club level, level. Boys and men could run faster, jump higher, hit harder, throw longer, etc., etc. Sorry, I'm not a transphobe, but we need to be sensible about this. And unless the competition is fair and safe, then it cannot be good for women's sports. Yeah.
Yep. Indeed. Paula says, Ben and Nana, please be careful about how you talk about these weight loss jabs. Not everyone that takes them are feckless idiots like you seem to be implying. I mean, I never did.
That's not fair.
Yes,
that's not fair.
Yes, you can lose muscle mass if you don't do something to make sure you keep your muscle mass. My stance on the jabs are... Do what you want. If you want to take weight loss jabs, that's fine. I think they're great for people who are morbidly obese, 30, 40 stone. If you're a bit thinner and you want to lose some weight, do what you want. I don't care.
Who said we thought you were feckless idiots? I don't think that at all. That's a very real misrepresentation of what I said. Actually, I think they're useful, as Ben said, for people who are, really obese. But I think, as Sorin, the expert, said, we need to be careful because we don't know the full side effects. And also, the reason why people are taking them is still why people are overweight or binge drinking is still there. And actually, on that note, Paul Wilkie says, I take the drug in tablet form, so this is on those type of drugs to lose weight. I can't say it's down to them, but I'm smoking up to 80 cigarettes a week less when I've been on them.
Wow.
So you see, I think that they are probably good to prevent addictive behaviour, but it's when you come off them.
80 cigarettes a week less. So what were you smoking?
God.
Goodness me.
That's a good question.
You chimney, you. Well, good luck quitting.
Yeah, well done with that.
And just finally, on the 100 Labour Party staffers and activists being bused over to America to campaign on the ground for Kamala Harris, Elon Musk tweeted that this is illegal. Some people replying saying it's not illegal. But one has said, Dom, good morning. You said it's an outrage. Labour activists are going to America. To Americans, it will look like they're representing the British people. Putin may endorse her because he knows she's weak as dishwater. I don't know if it's illegal or not. Some saying it is. Elon Musk saying it is. But whether it is or isn't, the optics of Labour Party staffers, an MP, the MP for Brentford, Ruth Cadbury her name, and activists going to America with Harris Waltz placards and banners and knocking on doors, not a good look, I don't think, and not very helpful, I'd argue, for David Lammy and Keir Starmer.
Well, she's an MP as well, so people banging on about Nigel Farage not being his constituency and this, that and the other. And finally, on that note, Humpty says, with Lammy's big mouth, apologies, David, calling Trump some very nasty things. Well, he did, didn't he? Labour can't afford for Trump to win, and that's why they're over in the USA trying to interfere with the American election. Dreadful behaviours. OK, keep them coming. GBNews.com/your say.
OK, to the Middle East now, where Israel's year-long war with Hamas took a dramatic turn yesterday as the IDF killed Yahya Sinwar, the group's leader and mastermind behind last year's tragic attacks.
Well, joining us now is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. So, Mark, what more can you tell us?
Well, we can tell you the Israeli War Cabinet is meeting at the moment to discuss the significance of the killing of Yahya Sinwar and the potential, perhaps, for renewed negotiations to try to free the 100 or so hostages who are still being held. And we can show you, hopefully, some drone footage of the last moments of the life of Yahya Sinwar as released by the IDF. This building here is where the drone is going into, bomb damaged, and Yahya Sinwar is on one of those chairs. The drone will zoom in very shortly. You can see this dusty figure with a scarf around his head, injured, his right arm having been shot, we understand, and was almost falling off. So he used his left arm hand to pick up a stick that you can see now being highlighted in red there, and in just a second or so he throws that stick in a last defiant gesture towards the Israelis. Then moments after that, a tank was called in to fire on that already bomb-damaged building, and then the next day when the Israelis inspected the building, they clearly saw Yahya Sinwar's body, and you can see those images there. We've blurred out the immediate image of his face, but the Israeli troops around those that body of Yahya Sinwar there, they noticed that, the facial features were very distinctive. The mole next to his left eye, his teeth, the rather bashed-in teeth that they noticed, his eyebrows. So they took some DNA samples, said that off and got 100% confirmation that it was him. And that set off a wave of celebrations, as you would imagine, right across Israel, because he was Israel's most wanted man. Let's have a listen to those celebrations. It's difficult to overstate, really, just how important the elimination of Yahya Sinwar was to the Israelis. He really was their equivalent of bin Laden, who masterminded the horrific attacks on October the 7th. And unlike bin Laden, who then disappeared off into obscurity, he was still there commanding this terror group on the ground in Hamas, despite the fact that it's been beaten back very significantly by the Israelis. It was still there. The job is still to be done as far as the Israeli military is concerned, and they won't rest until Hamas, as an entity that can do Israel harm, has been obliterated.
But isn't it like chopping the head off one of those snakes that brings back another head? Is there somebody underneath Yahya Sinwar who is likely to take over? Do we know what the structure of Hamas is?
Well, without a doubt, there will be others that will move into the breach. But for the moment, that organisation is in complete disarray and almost to the point of collapse because of a year, effectively, of military operations in Gaza, bombing and taking out these terrorists as well. And you've got the same happening in the north of Israel with the fight now against Hezbollah, who've lobbed some 8,000 missiles, rockets and drones into Israel since the time of that terrorist attack a year ago. And now, of course, their leadership, including the leader Hassan Nasrallah, has been taken out of the picture. They're in disarray. So there's no doubt Israel at the moment has the sort of military advantage. But in the longer term, there will have to be, of course, a more lasting solution to this crisis.
All right, Mark White, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Right, now the King and Queen have landed in Australia. It's the first time a reigning British monarch has visited Down Under for 13 years. And the first time a reigning king has ever visited. Can you believe that? The first time a reigning king's ever visited. I guess Queen Elizabeth went there a couple of times, didn't she? GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us now live from Australia. We saw them, Cameron, coming off the plane a bit earlier, that Australian Air Force plane. What's the plan from here forth now for the King and Queen?
Yeah, we certainly did, Ben. It's going to be a packed 6 days of engagements, both in Sydney and in Canberra. But of course, the King has cancer, so a lot of the engagements have been curtailed somewhat. For example, New Zealand was originally on the plan for the King to visit, of course, another realm where he is head of state, but that was canned pretty early on, a few months ago. Tomorrow as well, there's going to be no engagements at all, and that is to allow the King time to rest and recuperate, because although I'm sure it was a very comfortable flight for the King, it was still a 24-hour flight for the King. He took off from Heathrow yesterday on a commercial flight to Singapore before the Australian Air Force flights picked him and the Queen up to take him to Sydney. But as the King landed, the Royal Opera House behind me lit up. You hear someone saying, "God bless the King," behind me. The Royal Opera House lit up with pictures from his previous 15 visits to Australia, official visits, I should say, when, of course, he was Prince Charles. And as you said, Ben, this is the first time he is visited as monarch. But how are Australian citizens taking to this? Well, it really depends on who you ask. For example, the Republican movement here in Australia, they're calling it the farewell tour of Australia. But you talk to monarchists, the Australian Monarchy League even, and they are very pleased he's here, funnily enough. Thousands of signatures signed a letter to the King ahead of his visit, welcoming him. But perhaps slightly more difficult for the King is the fact that 6 state premiers in Australia, they are the kind of leaders, the political leaders of each state in Australia, have snubbed a reception with King Charles in Canberra on Monday. There's been various excuses, but monarchists are saying that it's a bit of a slap in the face for King Charles. But his focus will very much be on his engagements. He said in a statement a few hours ago that we are really looking forward to returning to this beautiful country to celebrate the extraordinarily rich cultures and to make it so special. So it's really going to be up to the Australian people how they take to King Charles being on Australian soil for the next 6 months. 6 days even, not 6 months, sorry.
I'd say that'd be a long visit. Cameron Walker, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Love the background of the Sydney Opera House, the big
projections.
Nice warm welcome for the King and Queen there. And also, Cameron mentioned in the last hour how the King had taken a commercial flight from Heathrow. I'm not sure if it was BA or Virgin or what, but that was interesting.
Well, that's wise as well, unlike some others. But up next, the NHS received a record number of complaints last year. Can you guess how many? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You know, is the fact that electric blanket sales going up actually a good thing? This means that people are switched on to the problems that the winter might hold, that they might have some defence against it, or is it a real indictment of a Labour government that they aren't going to be able to, you know, support elderly people in their hour of need?
Good morning, by the way.
Morning.
I think the sale of electric blankets may well be because we've had this cold snap because of the Arctic weather coming in from the north. However, I think it's an absolute reality that, as your clip said, that over 800,000 elderly people who are eligible for the winter fuel allowance, who can get pension credits, are struggling to apply. And so what is absolutely essential at the moment is that all of those older people who are eligible for pension credits do apply and do get what's owed to them. The benefits are owed to them. And the average that people will get through pension credits is about £78 a week. So that's definitely going to make a massive difference to people who are really struggling.
What can organisations like yours do to encourage people to, I guess, educate themselves on technology and make that first step into the digital world, which is very intimidating at times?
Absolutely, and that's what we do at Good Things Foundation. So we're a national charity. We work all across the whole of the UK. And in your clip there, you had Links Digital, and they're a member of what we call the National Digital Inclusion Network, which is a network of local charities, small local community organisations, food banks, job centres, old people's clubs. So anyone, any organisation at that local level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, it's just fast approaching 23 minutes after 11 o'clock this morning. This is Britain's Newsroom with me and Ben. Right, joining us, political commentator Emma Trimble and author and commentator Nikki Hodgson. Shall we start with this very sad news? Simon Cowell having a moment of reflection amid Liam Payne's death as he thought of One Direction as his son. Nikki?
I mean, I've got so much sympathy for Liam Payne and his family, but Simon Cowell perhaps not so much. I'm a bit cynical about him as an operator. Because he's I mean, look, he's made so much money out of so many young people for so many years. I know it's his business, I know it's his industry.
What's wrong with that?
But, well, maybe there isn't, but there are so many stories about him which I won't be able to repeat on air, about his terrible treatment of other human beings. I don't think he's a particularly nice man. I think he's very grasping.
Have you ever met him?
Not personally, but I know people that have worked with him and I've heard a lot on the grapevine through them, people that have actually worked for Psycho, the company. That's why I say it. But, I mean, I don't really care what Simon Cowell thinks, to be honest, but I do care about Liam Payne's family, and I feel very, very sad that there's been lots of stories for many years about his addiction struggles. He was open about his drinking problems. obviously nothing has been said so far, but there's a suggestion that that might be part of something that contributed to him dying, and that makes me feel terribly sad because, you know, I've had people with addiction issues. My dad was an addict, he was an alcoholic, and the trauma and the pain that they inflict on others, but also themselves, because they desperately want to stop and they can't. Real addicts.
I just feel so sad, Emma, for his young child, Bear, who's 7 years old, the child he had with Cheryl Cole. And, you know, I got some stick on your say a second ago saying, Ben, why are you saying, what are you doing? I said at the top of the last hour, you know, very sad about Liam Payne's death. I was absolutely shocked to hear it when I woke up that morning. But I said, what are you doing getting drugged up in a hotel room? You know, when you've got a 7-year-old child halfway across the world. Someone has accused me of being not very sympathetic because I said
Well, you
that,
have a young son, don't you? So, I mean, I think that...
very sympathetic.
I mean, I can't imagine what his family must be going through, but also because I think with something like addiction, whether it's alcoholism or drugs, the people who are close to them, who may have tried and failed to help them, won't be able to help, even if it's wrongly, but feel that they have some kind of responsibility because they weren't able to stop it. And I think those conflicted feelings, also if you're a young child and something like this has happened to your father, especially as a young boy, you know, that's something that will resonate throughout the whole of his life. And this, I mean, I didn't know anything about him, actually, before this story broke. And I watched some videos. A lot of people have been, journalists have been posting interviews that they'd done with him. And he seems like a really, really lovely guy who must have been really struggling with
very
these
smart
things.
and quick.
And he seems like a sweet person. And I don't know exactly what the cause of his, you know, falling from this window was. But I think it just goes to show how complicated people are. You know, that you can, you know, come across as this lovely, jovial and sweet person, but obviously, if with these sorts of issues, something else is going on.
Yeah, he said last year in an interview that he hides it very well. He said he was struggling. He said, I don't know where my rock bottom is. It could still be to come, and you'd never guess, but, you know, I am in turmoil.
So I just sometimes do find it difficult when I hear somebody who's got literally everything going through that, because, you know, one of my very close friends, their best friend is, you know, has some very serious issues with cancers and things like that, and half of me feels so sad for Liam, but then the other half of me thinks, well, why? You had everything. And
but it is an illness now, and past the point, that's the problem. And I guess, well, I mean, that's just, that's the problem with it.
But also, I mean, man doesn't live by bread alone, so you can have everything in the world and still, have those things going on the inside. And I think also, I mean, we're speaking about his child, I think, you know, children sense when something's wrong, and I think that there's, even with young children, there's a feeling of sort of wanting to save your parents, wanting to stop them from, you know, leaving you if you feel that they you know, they might go somewhere in some way, whether it's, you know, because of alcohol or whatever reason. And I think, I mean, I just really can't imagine the pain that young boy must be going through and how hard it must have been for his for his mother to tell him.
Yeah, it's unbearable thinking about it.
All right, well, let's not think about it too much then. Let's move on to this one. The NHS has a record number of written complaints. All right, my number for this, I think, about 250,000. That's what
complaints. 75,000?
All right, well, if you'd read your script there, it actually said it. 241,000.
Oh, so I was closer.
No, I'm closer.
What was your guess?
250,000.
Oh, you read the script.
Well, you should have done as well. You could have. You
read it. You
had the
naughty
option.
cheat.
Right, Emma.
So apparently, GPs have been also using, aside from how many complaints, unsurprising, the GPs have been using ChatGPT to write their responses to patients' complaints. And the Medical Defence Union has expressed concerns that not only might this lead to inaccuracies or to the GPs giving a kind of cookie-cutter response that doesn't really respond to the specifics of the patient's complaint, but also that they're handing over sensitive information to ChatGPT, to an AI, in order to write these responses. We all know the NHS is broken, but you do have to wonder, you know, the judgment of the GPs who have chosen to put sensitive information into an AI that is, it's a company, it's a third party. But I mean, I'm not surprised at all about the rising number of complaints because many people can't get to see a GP. When you do get to see a GP, you have such a short amount of time with them that they can't look at you holistically. So you have to have separate appointments for separate ailments. It takes them, therefore, takes them much longer to actually figure out what's going on with people. And very many people, I know from personal experience, they just drop out of the system because it's too difficult to actually get somewhere. And so I would not be surprised if there are people who have died as a result of the system being so difficult to operate their way through if they're ill. They've got no one to fight on their behalf.
Oh, that's the way. I mean, that's...
But it just becomes too difficult and they just resign themselves to their ailments.
That's happening all the time. Nikki?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for the NHS several times, a long time ago, but I used to work in cancer waiting lists and I used to work in surgery, in admin as a student. But the stuff that I used to read about, I worked on clinical negligence reports, so things like medical instruments being left in bodies and, just appall it. A young mum being left paralysed after she had the baby because, they messed up the surgery, things like that. They were just appalling things to read about. And that was a long time ago before there were this number of complaints. The thing that really disturbs me is the ChatGPT issue. How are people of GP's intelligence not able to realise that is a breach of confidentiality?
Because they're overworked, Nikki.
It's just so unacceptable, though, isn't it? It's just so basic. And it's the first thing you learn when you work for the NHS. The first thing they press into you as an admin is confidentiality.
I don't think they thought that far ahead because a lot of people just think, oh, it's ChatGPT, it's going somewhere.
It's somewhere and somehow anonymous.
Yeah,
absolute rubbish.
It isn't. All right, what about this then, Nikki? Alexa was spreading fake news. Amazon admits errors. What, the Alexa?
Well, again, this is the thing. Have you noticed now, if you search something in Google, you get a little AI potted history of something. So many people are turning to use that now, and so much of it is actually rubbish and has errors in it.
Emma,
and Alexa is spreading it.
Got to go to the news. 10 seconds.
I've asked ChatGPT, I know it's not Alexa, questions about things that I know about, and it very often gets things quite dramatically wrong. One of the funny things with Alexa that is mentioned here is apparently Mike Tyson spoke on television explaining his support for Palestine and encouraging a boycott of Israel, and this fact checker found that wasn't true. It's a very specific and strange thing for it to be lying about.
All right, listen, Emma Trimble and also Nikki Hodgson, thank you very much. Let's now get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Ben, Nana, thank you very much. Fast approaching 32 minutes past 11. Start this half hour with royal news, and King Charles and Queen Camilla have touched down in Australia for a historic tour. The couple landed in Sydney in the last hour or so, greeted with a warm welcome and a bouquet of flowers for the Queen. It's His Majesty's first trip to Australia as King and his first overseas official trip since being diagnosed with cancer earlier this year. The royal couple will spend 6 days touring Canberra and Sydney before heading to Samoa for a state visit and a Commonwealth summit, which King Charles will formally open. Their tour schedule, though, has been scaled back on doctors' advice, with a New Zealand visit cancelled. Barristers representing the Harrods survivors group have condemned what they describe as the horrible and monstrous abuse at the hands of Mohammed Al Fayed after a report has exposed new allegations at Fulham Football Club. Dean Armstrong KC and his team have praised the bravery of the former Fulham women's captain, Ronnie Gibbons, who's accused the billionaire of sexual assault during her time at the club, aged just 20. Her claims are part of a wider investigation by the Met Police into 40 new allegations of sexual misconduct against Al Fayed and others. Investigators are pledging to uncover further abuses and hold those involved accountable, no matter their role. Fulham Football Club and Harrods have both condemned the allegations, and they're urging anyone affected to come forward. A baby has died after a migrant boat got into trouble in the English Channel. French authorities rescued 65 migrants and took them back to Boulogne with a French patrol boat and helicopter leading the operation. The baby was found unconscious and sadly later pronounced dead. Searches are still underway for any more missing people. An investigation is ongoing. It means so far this year over 27,500 people have crossed the Channel, up 5% from last year. And finally, singer-songwriter Ed Sheeran has urged people to be kind as he paid tribute to Liam Payne following his death, aged 31. Musicians and famous faces have been remembering the One Direction star after police in Argentina confirmed he died falling from a third-floor balcony of a hotel in Buenos Aires. A post-mortem found the singer suffered multiple traumas from that fall, with police reporting his room was in complete disarray. Well, One Direction fans have continued holding candlelight vigils in Argentina, remembering Liam for his kind, his funny and his brave soul. That's it from me for now. I'll be back with you in around half an hour. Up next, a quick look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
Here's a quick look at the markets for you. The pound will buy you $1.3036 and €1.2027 euros. The price of gold, £2,080 and 79 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,362 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Up at noon, good afternoon, Britain, and with Tom and Emily. Good morning to you both. What's in store for us today?
Good morning. Well, we've got a big question today. Is the Labour government going to war with the family? Now, we say this because we've got this Halloween budget upcoming, and we're hearing talk of now inheritance tax rises, more taxes on drivers, the family car, of course, VAT on school fees, national insurance. I mean, what else could there be in that budget that is going to act against the family, normal families in this country?
A word on stamp duty as well. Apparently, they're lowering the threshold of where you pay higher rates.
Yeah, and
add that to the list.
That, of course, means the property market is stickier. People less likely to move, less likely to be in a house that fits their needs. That gums up the entire market. It's not just the effect on that, it's the cascading effect on fewer people moving, less money moving around the system. That could actually cut revenue rather than raise it.
And Sadiq Khan, he's become an education expert and an expert on misogyny, apparently. He's telling primary schools that they need to be teaching primary school-aged children, so that's children aged between 4 and 10, about misogyny and sexism and how to be nicer to women, presumably. I mean, where are all these misogynistic little children? I mean, do you see them about and about?
Ridiculous.
Apparently this is as important as, learning English and maths.
Who votes for Sadiq Khan?
Lots of people.
You know, year after year, he gets voted in, or election after election, and I sit there and wonder, who votes for this man? Nobody in London wanted you, Les. Nobody in London wants this nonsense claptrap being wasted, or taxpayer money being wasted. Who votes for Sadiq Khan?
I think that Sadiq Khan gets in every time for the same reason that Keir Starmer got in. It's not necessarily about what he promises and what he does. It's that people can't abide voting for the other lot.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't get it. I've never met anyone in London who actually said that they voted for him. And I've searched high and low.
You've searched high and low?
Nobody has said, or perhaps they don't want to admit it.
Oh, I know quite a few people who voted for him through gritted teeth. Yeah, I do. And a lot of people, and no one voted for him with a great deal of enthusiasm. But they all just sort of trudged in, I suppose we'll vote for Sadiq. It's that sort of attitude. But this could be his last term as Labour mayor. He's, of course, won 3 elections.
There's no limit. He could be in the job till he's 102.
But there are all these rumours about who's going to be the next candidate, because it seems that the shadow primary might have already begun. We've had names like Dawn Butler putting themselves forward. Could Emily Thornberry throw her hat in the ring? I mean, who knows? Who's to say?
All right, well, listen, we'll look forward to that. That's coming up at midday, still to come on Britain's Newsroom. England cricket will ban transgender players at elite level. But why not the grassroots?
And news just in, Niall Horan, the former One Direction member and friend of Liam Payne, has said he will, quote, cherish every moment he had with his former bandmate, who, of course, died in Buenos Aires earlier this week. He will cherish every moment he shared with him forever. More on that to come. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a tick.
Hi
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. After a misty start in places, it's turning increasingly unsettled with rain at times, strengthening winds, and Storm Ashley arrives on Sunday. Now, at the present time, Storm Ashley is on the other side of the Atlantic as a weak area of low pressure, but it deepens rapidly during Saturday. And by Sunday, it's bringing disruptive winds to many western and northern parts of the country. Ahead of that, a different low is bringing the potential for disruption for the northwest of Scotland through the rest of today. 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and high tides with coastal flooding a possibility. Also some heavy rain in the far northwest. That rain edging into western England and Wales by the end of the day, but we keep the sunshine after the fog clears across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. So an unsettled end to the day for Scotland as bands of heavy rain move across the country. Drier towards the east, but the more persistent rain is heading eastwards across the country, and Northern Ireland just sees it clearing through the evening, whilst Wales and Western England sees some outbreaks of mostly light rain at first before the heavier band of rain moves in by the end of the evening. So lively night to come with wet and windy weather across western and northern parts of the country, and then that transferring into the Midlands and eastern parts of England by dawn. Clearing skies for Scotland and Northern Ireland will allow temperatures to dip into the low single figures in some spots as the winds ease, but it's a milder night for England and Wales with cloud and wind first thing. Those outbreaks of rain across the Midlands, eastern England and the far southeast continue for much of the morning, but eventually peel away during the afternoon. Brighter skies to come for the rest of the UK, albeit with a few showers, and then it turns wet and windy again overnight as Storm Ashley arrives.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Right, it's 42 minutes after 11 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben, Leo and Nana Acquia.
Very good morning to you. Let's move on now to the Conservative leadership race. Last night, candidates Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch battled it out in a bombshell special GB News event.
Right, GB News political editor Christopher Hope is the man who chaired the debate, and he has this report.
Kemi Badenoch, will you call, please?
Heads.
Heads. Tails it is, Kemi Badenoch. Do you want to go first or second, Robert?
I'll go first, Chris.
And with that, the race to lead kicked off on GB News. Robert Jenrick would face questions from the Conservative members first, followed by Kemi Badenoch. And it's straight for Robert Jenrick on how to bring back the Reform voters.
That we tackled the biggest issues facing this country. And I think that does begin with migration. Because if we don't regain the public's trust on that issue, if we don't get back the millions of voters that we've lost to reform, we're just never going to be in government again.
It got spicy when talking about free speech.
The police have to enforce our existing laws without fear or favour. They must never allow a worry about community relations to stop fighting extremism.
Robert Jenrick's comments kept coming back to immigration and the ECHR.
So there's a clear choice here. It's leave or remain. And I'm for leave.
Christopher Chope has said today that Kemi Badenoch is preoccupied with her children. He says it's impossible to be a leader and a parent. Can a mum or a dad be that person and a leader?
Well, I hope so. I've got 3 kids myself. So I think he was wrong. He was definitely wrong.
The issue of slavery reparations is coming up. There's a meeting of the Commonwealth leaders next week. Should we pay slavery reparations for our imperial past?
No, absolutely not.
Then it was the turn of Kemi Badenoch. I asked if her pitch was based on principles but not policies, and if this was a problem.
I am not here to impose just what's in my head on everyone in the party. That is not what it needs. That is not how we unite the party. I know so many of you are tired and sick of the infighting and the squabbling. It happens when we don't get a consensus before we start proposing things to the public.
So where does you stand on ECHR withdrawal?
If we need to leave the ECHR in order to control migration, we should leave it. But it is not a silver bullet. It's not even the most radical thing that we can do.
Kemi Badenoch was asked by one of the members of the audience if it was time to end the culture wars.
It depends on who started these so-called culture wars.
They say you may have started it.
No, I don't think so. A lot of these things were happening long before Conservatives started speaking about them. I am worried about the way people talk about the history of this country.
But what does she think about being accused by a Tory MP that she can't be a mother of 3 and a leader?
Of course you can. I love my children. I have the most beautiful children in the world. I want to spend as much time with them as possible. I said to all of you that family was one of my key principles. I was able to be a great business secretary and trade secretary and equalities minister, effectively doing 3 jobs while balancing my home life. If I can do that, I can do this too.
And we did get some policies out of Kemi Badenoch in the end. Labour's putting VAT on private school bills from January. Would you reverse it if you become Prime Minister?
OK, so...
It's a policy.
I know it is a policy, so I feel bad because I have to slightly change what I said. That is the very first thing that I will do if I become Prime Minister.
But crucially, what did the members think?
I think it was a tie, actually. But for me, I think Jenrick just about.
Yeah, I think Kemi, I think she's absolutely great.
But at the end of the day, I have a feeling neither of them will become Prime Minister.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the thing is, neither of them are going to appeal to the electorate. We lost more votes to Labour than we did to Reform.
Christopher Hope, GB News, Westminster.
And you can catch up with last night's event by going to gbnews.com or scanning the QR code that you see on the screen.
Great stuff. Right, up next, we're going to tell you about the latest transsexual turmoil in sports. This time, it's cricket. Don't miss that. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a few minutes.
Hello there. I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
I'm joined now by an acknowledged authority on Ludwig van Beethoven. He's already written 7 books on the subject, and next week his 8th is released. It's called In Search of Beethoven, and it stands apart as a deeply personal account of John Suchet's relationship with the great composer as he follows his footsteps from Bonn to Vienna. Yes, I introduce author, journalist and classic FM presenter John Suchet.
Hello, Michael.
It's delightful to have you here, and you have, as I say, written now 8 books on Beethoven. So the question is, why Beethoven?
Well, the word that is often used that I don't like is obsession, obsessive, because somehow there's something not quite right about that. The word that I use is passion. I have a passion for this man's life and music that began, I suppose, around 50 years ago, sometime in my early 20s. I can't remember the exact moment. He kind of crept up on me, and suddenly, as I was a journalist, TV journalist all my life, but before that I was a failed musician. I wanted to be a professional musician, but fortunately for the world of music, I realised I didn't have the talent. But this man's music crept up on me, and I knew from then that it would not go away, it would only increase, and that is what's happened. There are other composers I will listen to, minor names like Mozart, Wagner, Haydn, but Beethoven just does it for me. I was highly educated musically at school because I loved it, to the extent that I wanted to turn professional, but as I say, I didn't have the talent, but that has stayed with me. I read music, I understand music, as you say, I play the trombone, in those days to quite a high level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Now, transgender women are to be banned from professional and semi-professional women's cricket in England, but crucially, Nana, not from the grassroots game.
I don't get it. I mean, I don't. I mean, it's just it's a men against women. It's a sport where you could hurt a woman because women are obviously the weaker physical sex in general. So, men shouldn't be competing with women against women.
It's all cricket to me.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Well, anyway, England and Wales Cricket Board say that they recognise this as a complex issue and they want everyone to feel included and women in the sport.
Joining us now is human rights activist Miranda Yardley. Good morning, Miranda. Thanks for joining us. Is this the right decision? Why should biological men, trans women, be competing against women in their own sports?
You see, if we take the whole mystery of the concept of trans women away from it and just say men, we can frame this as why should men be playing cricket with women? Why should men be playing cricket with young girls? Why should men have the right to share a changing room or a shower with young girls and with women? And they talk about diversity and inclusion and equality, and they give barely a thought to the rights of women and young girls. I don't see how this is helping anybody apart from the small number of men who wish to LARP as women.
See, this is the thing. And I would be called transphobic, or people are probably calling me that now, for daring to utter this. But to me, it seems quite obvious. Why do you think that there feels like there's this pressure to create some sort of diversity when ultimately it's at the expense of women? I just don't understand where the pressure's coming from and why it's actually happening.
Well, I think that we should wear our mutual transphobia with pride and say that this really has gone absolutely too far. Although I said that there was a small number of men who are claiming this status to do this, it's clear that it is absolutely increasing, and that I think that the girls who are doing this, I think it's terrible for the women and girls who are doing it, because it is not promoting any form of diversity in cricket at all. What it is doing is it is acting in an incredibly exclusionary way. It is loading the cards against the women who are doing this. Now, a few years ago, I joined a men's rugby team because I wanted to get fit, and it was really, really good fun. Playing rugby against men, but also playing rugby against men, it comes at a cost. Men are big and they're fast, and when they hit you, it's really, really going to hurt. And the thought of women getting into a contact sport like that should strike fear into the heart of every single right-minded person. Now, all of these sports are funded by groups and organisations that are making these absolutely dreadful EDI conditions part of the conditions for which the people receive funding. And I think, again, this is something else that needs to be stopped right at the bud. And the EDI funding we need to find an alternative way of funding these organisations rather than having them be coerced into effectively making themselves utterly exclusionary towards women and girls. And pretty much anyone.
All right, Miranda Yardley, thank you for joining us this morning on this issue. Appreciate your contribution. I do think, though, as much as I think trans women, biological men, are cheats for playing women's sport, I think women simply need to stop playing, especially at the elite level. If they all got together and said, I'm not competing in this, I'm not playing against a biological man, I think you'd get some action. But
well, just a man, isn't it? I'm not competing against a man.
Yeah.
A woman should not be competing against a man should not be competing against a woman. In particular, where there's contact-style sports, it makes absolutely no sense. But anyway, what are your thoughts? Loads more still to come. That's it from Britain's Newsroom.
Up next, Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. Have a good weekend.
No. We're just getting in reports that a heavily pregnant woman and indeed her unborn baby may have sadly died after a crash involving an unmarked police car. Early reports, but we will be getting more on this after the break.
Yes, we'll bring you any developments as we get them. And also, a question to you. Do you think primary school-age children, so between the age of 4 and 10, need to be taught about misogyny because of the rise of people like Andrew Tate? That's apparently what Sadiq Khan wants for all primary schools in London. Would you approve of such a thing? All of that after the weather. Good Afternoon Britain, 12 till 3. Stick with us.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. After a misty start in places, it's turning increasingly unsettled with rain at times, strengthening winds, and Storm Ashley arrives on Sunday. Now, at the present time, Storm Ashley is on the other side of the Atlantic as a weak area of low pressure, but it deepens rapidly during Saturday. And by Sunday, it's bringing disruptive winds to many western and northern parts of the country. Ahead of that, a different low is bringing the potential for disruption for the northwest of Scotland through the rest of today. 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and high tides with coastal flooding a possibility. Also some heavy rain in the far northwest. That rain edging into western England and Wales by the end of the day, but we keep the sunshine after the fog clears across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. So an unsettled end to the day for Scotland as bands of heavy rain move across the country. Drier towards the east, but the more persistent rain is heading eastwards across the country, and Northern Ireland just sees it clearing through the evening, whilst Wales and Western England sees some outbreaks of mostly light rain